Prologue. Strange events occur in a luxurious aristocratic castle. The main character is in a state of hysterics. These attacks happen to her regularly. The servants try to restrain her so that she does not harm herself and others. The aristocrat's lover intervened in the situation. He saw that his servants were unable to cope with the girl, so he decided to restrain her from the thoughtless actions that she might commit during the attack. The main character stares at the man who is trying to hold her back. The girl cannot recognize him, but for some reason the eyes of this aristocrat seem familiar to her. The aristocrat continues to hold the girl, but he understands that she must be calmed down immediately. Otherwise, it could lead to terrible consequences. The main character looks closely into the nobleman's eyes and sees in them a part of the curse that has taken hold of her. The girl fears that her suffering has been transmitted to her lover. The man turned to his servants and ordered them to leave the mistress's chambers immediately. He wants to sort out the situation himself. The aristocrat feels that the servants are frightening his wife and that their presence is only making things worse for her. After that, the man looked at his wife carefully and thought that this could not go on any longer. Otherwise, his bride could die. Something urgently needed to be done. The aristocrat took the bottle and filled his mouth with the calming medicine. This will help to give the medicine to the girl who does not want to take it and constantly resists. When the nobleman came to his senses a little, he took his bride's head in his hands and again tried to return her consciousness to the real world in a way that, in the man's opinion, was sure to work. The aristocrat came close to his beloved and passionately kissed her on the lips, handing over the sedative. The girl did not expect such a turn of events, but it helped her come to her senses a little and remember who was in front of her now. After that, the main character decided to free herself from her fiancé's embrace. She doesn't want him to kiss her. It brings her moral pain. The aristocrat stopped the young man's inappropriate kiss and laid her head on his chest. The man expected a different reaction from the girl. He is a little puzzled and wants to understand why his beloved is behaving this way. The main character almost lost her moral and physical strength because of her attack. The girl turned to her fiancé and said that he makes her unhappy and brings her a lot of mental pain. The aristocrat began to cry again. The girl thought for a moment and said that the man only had to kill her so that she would stop suffering, and this whole terrible situation would be resolved once and for all. The action takes place in the real world. A grieving girl looks at portraits of her parents who died in an accident. According to official data, the heroine's relatives died in a fire caused by an unextinguished cigarette. The girl kneels before the portraits of her parents and prays for their souls so that they may find eternal peace. The heroine is left alone in this world and misses her untimely departed father and mother very much. This young lady's name is Yuna Tsukishiro. She was an ordinary girl who grew up in a poor but very close-knit family and always dreamed of becoming a pop singer. After the death of her parents, the heroine decided to make her dream come true and went to an audition to sign a contract with a large production company that would make her famous. The president of the production corporation received Yuna Tsukishiro in his office and said that he knew about the grief that had befallen the girl's family. Therefore, he wanted to help her become a famous singer. The heroine was very surprised at first when she heard the words of the company president. But this man really decided to support the unfortunate girl who had experienced great grief. He said that Yuna Tsukishiro should believe in her dream to be strong. And then she will succeed. After some time, the head of the corporation kept his word, and the girl became a professional singer. The heroine was grateful for this gift of fate. The bohemian life was hard for Yuna, but she felt happy. But one day, a dark day came again in the life of the young vocalist. She got into a car accident and lost the ability to sing because she injured her neck. When the heroine woke up in the hospital, her doctor said that she would no longer be able to sing. This was a very hard blow for the girl, who had just come out of depression and returned to normal life. By the will of fate, Yuna Tsukishiro lost everything that was important to her in this life. Now the former singer had only one acceptable way out of the current situation, as she believed at that moment. The unfortunate girl fell into a deep depression and made another terrible mistake. She tried to solve all her problems in a way that only faint-hearted cowards resort to, who do not want to continue the fight. But this led to completely unexpected consequences. The main character has come to after attempting to commit suicide. She is lying in bed with her neck wrapped in bandages. Yuna Tsukishiro's consciousness has magically ended up in the body of a girl named Arya, who lives in another fantasy world and is the main character of this story. But the girl still cannot understand what happened to her and where she is now. The main character has not yet fully recovered from her state of oblivion. A priest sits next to Arya Delina's bed, trying to bring the girl to her senses. He said that his ward had done a very stupid thing, trying to commit suicide. After all, only yesterday was the magnificent wedding of Crown Prince Luciano and Princess Dorothea. The main character sat up on her bed. The girl felt her bandaged neck, which hurt a lot. After that, she tried to understand what the priest was talking about. Ariadalina's interlocutor continues to talk about the recent wedding of the crown prince and princess. He added that the people of the empire had been waiting for this event for a long time, and that it had finally happened. The main character gathered her thoughts and realized that Crown Prince Luciano and Princess Dorothea were the heroes of a love story she had recently read. The girl began to guess that she had entered the fantasy world of this work. The girl remembers that this exciting book, which describes the love story of Luciano and Dorothea, made a great impression on her. Sometimes in her dreams, she wanted to be one of the heroines of this romantic work, to escape from her terrible reality, which led her to deep depression. The priest who talks to the girl calls her by the name Ariadalina. She remembers that there is a character with that name in the novel. This heroine appears in the background of the storyline. She has a relationship with a man named Carlosian and is his fictitious bride. According to the plot of the fantasy novel in which the main character finds herself, Ariadalina loves her fiancé with all her heart. But Carlosian never reciprocated the girl's feelings because his heart belongs to Lady Dorothea, who married Crown Prince Luciano. Driven to despair by her lover's indifference, Ariadalina turned to black magic to resolve the situation in her favor and gain Carlosian's love. The girl, consumed by jealousy towards her fiancé and his beloved, cast a terrible curse on Princess Dorothea. When everyone found out what the unfortunate Ariadalina had done, she was arrested and locked up in a monastery. After that, the girl tried to commit suicide in order to get rid of the unbearable mental pain that haunted her even in the spiritual monastery. The main character tried to say something to the priest sitting next to her bed, but she stopped and realized that she couldn't speak now. Apparently, while trying to commit suicide, Ariadalina injured her throat. It was injured by the rope with which the girl decided to leave this world. The priest noticed that his ward was trying to say something. He stopped the girl and informed her that she had injured her neck and had not yet recovered from her injury. Perhaps Ariadalina would never be able to speak. Time would tell. The girl listens attentively to her guardian, who asked her not to disturb her vocal apparatus by trying to speak for a while. Right now, the main character's throat needs complete rest. Ariadalina realizes that she is in a very difficult situation. She is in a monastery where she was imprisoned for illegal actions. In addition, the girl cannot speak at all. It is simply terrible. When the priest left the room, Ariadalina remembered that there was another rope under her bed. She decided to get out of bed and get it from under the bed to finish the job. The main character took the rope from under her bed and looked at it carefully. The girl understands that she found herself in a difficult life situation, and now she has a wonderful moment to leave this world. But for some reason, Ariadalina began to have doubts about the correctness of her choice. Despite this, the girl began to tie a familiar knot that would help her quickly and easily settle accounts with this burdensome life that had greatly disappointed her. Ariadalina had nothing more to do here, because she had lost her love, her social status, and even her ability to speak. The main character took her rope and went outside from her monastic cell to find a suitable tree and finish the job. A few minutes later, the girl found what she was looking for and tied the rope to a tree branch. Ariadalina stuck her head in the noose she had just made and made another attempt to leave this world she hated. In the end, the girl said that she was very disappointed not only in this life, but also in the Lord, who had condemned her to suffering and abandoned her at the most difficult moment. And again, the main character was in for a complete disappointment. She failed to leave this world this time, too. She woke up in her bed again after trying to kill herself. The same priest sits next to the girl's bed and makes the same speeches about the recent wedding of Crown Prince Luciano and Princess Dorothea. The main character realizes that she has been reborn again at the same moment in the novel's plotline as last time. The action takes place in the palace of Princess Ariadalina. The main character is kneeling before her mistress and trying to find out why the king's daughter set her up. The princess realizes her power over Ariadalina. The king's daughter said that the main character has no reason to be angry with her because she was merciful enough to spare the life of her lover's fictitious bride. But the main character is angry with her interlocutor. She said that she always trusted the princess, but she treacherously set her up. The king's daughter leaned over her subject and took her face in her hands. The princess said that she had betrayed the girl because she did not know her true place and dared to lay claim to her lover Carlosian Denebes, who should belong only to the king's daughter. The princess came close to her interlocutor and whispered in her ear that Carlosian Denebes would always belong only to her. Finally, she took her rightful place next to her lover, and the unfortunate Arya was just an obedient pawn in her game. The king's daughter added that her subject should not have trusted a man who had never shown her affection or kindness. It was a terrible mistake on her part, and let it serve as a good lesson for Arya in the future. The main character listened carefully to her mistress and said that Carlosian Denebes would never love the princess who dreams of possessing him. The king's daughter looked at her interlocutor with disdain and said that she was very much mistaken if she thought that Carlosian Denebes would not love the princess. She was not so stupid as not to achieve this. The main character looks closely at her interlocutor and understands that the insidious princess already has a cunning plan to win the favor of Carlosian Denebes. Arya remembered her lover, and her heart fluttered in her chest from this memory. The girl understands that now Carlosian Denebes does not love her and longs for the embrace of another woman. The princess finished her visit and was about to leave. She finally told the unfortunate girl that she must live long enough to watch with a heavy heart the love and life successes of her mistress. The main character is now in a very humiliating position. The king's daughter mocks the girl, trampling on her pride and honor. The unhappy and humiliated Arya kneels before her mistress. The girl cries bitterly and thinks that it would be better if she never met Carlosian Denebes and fell in love with him. Arya continues to cry uncontrollably, and her fragile girlish shoulders shake from this bitter and hopeless cry. The action takes place again in the main character's monastic cell. The girl woke up a few minutes ago after her second attempt to commit suicide. She just replayed the episode of the meeting with the princess and realized that the memories of the dead Arya remained in her brain. The girl came to her senses a little and got up from her bed. She went to the mirror to look at her reflection and assess her appearance. The main character remembered her meeting with the king's treacherous daughter, which happened not so long ago. After that, the girl realized that the main villain in this fantasy world is the king's daughter, who dreams of possessing Carlosian Denebes. Arya looks closely at her reflection in the mirror and feels miserable and trampled. She sees only a pale shadow of the once luxurious aristocrat who has ruined her life irrevocably. The main character tries to remember how many times she has already tried to leave this world. But the girl's memory still does not obey her. Arya realized that she had already gone through dozens of attempts to destroy herself. But she was always reborn again at the same moment in the novel's plotline. The wounds the girl received during her attempts at self-destruction always healed well. The same should happen this time. But the scars will remain forever. The main character tries to understand why she is constantly reborn if this story has long ended. Arya thought for a moment and decided that the next time she tried to leave this world, she should sweep the place. Maybe the sacred power of the monastery prevented the girl from dying. The main character took the rope again and went outside from her monastic cell to get to the forest and find a suitable tree there. The girl had already learned to do this very well. Suddenly, Arya heard some strange noise, which frightened her a little and left her somewhat confused. The girl heard the sound of human footsteps. Apparently, someone was trying to find the main character in the dense thickets of the forest. This person turned out to be a young aristocrat who knows Arya well. The young man managed to find the main character in the forest and is now indignant that the girl is trying to escape from the monastery, as it seems to him. He thinks that Arya wants to use the rope to arrange an escape. The main character looks at the young aristocrat indifferently and does not listen to him at all. She only wants to quickly find a suitable tree and make another attempt to leave this world. The young man made a quick decision when he saw Arya with a rope in her hands. He attacked the girl to take away the weapon with which she wanted to escape from the monastery. But the main character is not going to give up so easily. She resists with all her might the man who wants to take possession of her rope. The young aristocrat also does not want to give in to the stubborn girl. He firmly grabbed the main character's hands and does not let her go. During the struggle, the bandages that had been wrapped around the girl's arms, which were the result of the main character's previous attempts to commit suicide, came unwound. The bandages that hid the bruises on Arya neck had also loosened considerably. So the young man saw the unfortunate girl's wounds with his own eyes. This left him in shock. Finally, the main character made a clever move and was able to escape from the pursuer's hands. The girl said that she had important business now, so she should not be disturbed. The young aristocrat tries to stop Ariadalina, but all his efforts prove to be absolutely useless. There is a suitable tree ahead, so the main character rushes towards it to finish the job and leave this terrible world again. The young man watches the girl run away and can do nothing. He asks the main character to stop, but she does not listen to him at all. The young aristocrat tries to understand what is really going on and why Ariadalina is behaving so strangely. The young man is also very confused by the rope that the girl values so much. Suddenly, Luciano and Dorofea Boravicia, who had recently become husband and wife, appeared in the forest. The young aristocrat turned out to be their servant, who ensures the safety of the newlyweds and carries out various assignments for his masters. The young man noticed his masters, who appeared not far from him, and he knelt before them. He said that he had met Ariadalina in the forest, who was holding a rope in her hands. Crown Prince Luciano Boravicia listened carefully to his servant and said that it was urgent to catch Lady Ariadalina, who could again create big problems for everyone. Princess Dorofea Boravicia listened to her husband and said that such a forest chase could be dangerous for him. Therefore, she and her servant Benjamin would be engaged in the capture of Lady Ariadalina. The Crown Prince replied that he was not afraid of difficulties. He wanted to catch the girl on his own. He might need his wife's help if Lady Ariadalina resorted to black magic. Meanwhile, the main character found a tree suitable for her work and tied a rope to it. The girl thought that the soul of the deceased Ariadalina was defiling her with its curse and not allowing her to die. The main character put the rope noose around her neck again and thought about not letting anyone control her life and death. Ariadalina was about to take the last step and end all her suffering. But suddenly she felt some new support below. The girl looked down and saw that the young aristocrat Benjamin had grabbed her legs and was trying to stop her from leaving this world. The young man was very scared. He was shouting loudly at the main character for her recklessness. Ariadalina looks at her savior with indifference and thinks that she is tired of all the people in this world, especially those who are trying to save the unfortunate girl. The main character turned to the Crown Prince's bodyguard Luciano and told him to leave her alone and let her leave this world in peace. Suddenly, Ariadalina saw the Boravidi couple approaching her. Crown Prince Luciano decided to take his sword out of its sheath to cut the rope on which the main character was hanging. With one swing of his blade, the Crown Prince solved the problem with the rope that was wrapped around Ariadalina's neck, and the girl instantly found herself on the soft grass near the tree. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, except for the main character. Princess Dorothea approached the girl and asked why she had just tried to end her life. The king's daughter did not understand how anyone could decide on such a stupid and desperate act. Ariadalina sits on the grass with a rope around her neck and looks with hostility at the princess, who is trying to help the main character. The girl understands perfectly well that the king's daughter is now showing her saintly character, for which she is famous throughout the empire. The main character is in a state of shock. The girl realized that Princess Dorofea Borovicia is trying to help her, despite the fact that she tried to curse her. Ariadalina rose to her feet and approached the hated princess. The girl looked into her rival's eyes and tried to say that she could not interfere in the current situation because it was none of her business. But the main character did not succeed because she cannot speak now due to the injuries she received earlier. The princess looks closely at the unfortunate girl and understands that she cannot speak. This greatly surprised the king's daughter. Ariadalina nodded in agreement and tried to say something, but nothing came out. It only caused a pain in the girl's throat. Princess Dorofea looked at the main character and said that she could help her. She wanted to heal the girl with her magical abilities. The main character did not expect such a development of events. The girl thought that if Princess Dorofea could heal her, then her ability to speak and sing would return to her. This would be a great gift of fate, and the main character would no longer have to try to settle scores with this hateful life. According to the plot of the fantasy novel in which the main character finds herself, Princess Dorothea is a holy girl who has the gift of healing. She told Ariadalina that she could heal her if the damage to her throat was outside, not inside her body. After a few seconds, the holy princess gathered her thoughts and began to use her gift of healing in a special way. The girl began to sing a simple but very beautiful melody, which should heal Ariadalina with its vibrations. The main character looks closely at Princess Dorofea and marvels at the beauty of her enchanting voice, which has magical powers. Suddenly, Ariadalina felt discomfort in her throat. The girl grabbed her neck and moaned loudly, trying to relieve her pain. The king's daughter looks at the main character and is completely confused. She did not expect such a reaction from Ariadalina to the magical treatment. Ariadalina looked at Princess Dorothea with hatred and told her that her throat was burning and that she should stop singing her magic song immediately. These words came with great difficulty to the girl. The guard Benjamin ran up to the main character and tried to help the girl. After that, the young nobleman asked the princess why Ariadalina's wound was not healing. The holy princess looks at her patient and cannot understand anything. For some reason, Ariadalina does not succumb to her healing magic. This has never happened before. The main character calmed down a little when her pain subsided a little. The girl realized that her wound was not amenable to the healing magic of the holy princess, so it was simply incurable. The hope that had appeared in Ariadalina's soul for a few moments immediately evaporated, and despair and hopeless melancholy reigned in its place again. Could it be that the girl who loved to sing would never be able to do so now? It was simply terrible. All the dreams of the unfortunate aristocrat had collapsed in an instant. The main character began to break free from the guard Benjamin's hands again. She said to leave her alone and let her finish the job. Ariadalina burst into tears again and said that she simply wanted to leave this life and did not want anyone to interfere with her or persuade her not to do it. Everything had already been decided long ago, but the incident in the forest ended well. Crown Prince Luciano and Princess Dorothea were able to return Ariadalina to the monastery so that she could continue her treatment of body and soul. At the moment, the main character is in the Cathedral of Saint Barai and tries to pray. But the girl can't do anything because her thoughts are upset. This tires and irritates Ariadalina. The main character listens to a banal sermon from the abbot of the monastery where she is imprisoned. But this sermon does not find a response in the girl's heart. Ariadalina looks at the image of Saint Barail on a beautiful stained glass window opposite her. The main character decided to pray to this saint to heal her. After this, the girl opened the Holy Scripture and was very surprised when the letters in the book began to appear on their own, creating a completely new text. The main character begins to guess why she cannot die even after the end of the main storyline of the novel. Ariadalina looks closely at the letters that appear and realizes that she has entered a plot branch of a fantasy story that can go on forever or end in any way. The main character began to carefully read the book that was in her hands. In this book, new scenes of the novel began to appear that were not there before. And not all of the new episodes were liked by the girl, who carefully read them during the sermon of the monastery mentor. Ariadalina reads an alternative ending to the novel, in which Carlosian de Nabes brutally murders his fictitious fiancée, who has worn him out with her incessant jealousy. This plot twist outraged the protagonist, but also made the girl think. The main character realized that if she did everything right, she would be able to change the plot of the novel at her own discretion and die from the sword of Carlosian de Nabes. The girl was glad that such a wonderful idea had come to her mind, and with a calm soul, she left the boring sermon, which she was already very tired of. One of the monks of the monastery tried to catch up with the main character, who left the sermon without permission. But Ariadalina wants to get rid of the annoying pursuer as soon as possible. The girl is completely focused on what she needs to do to change the plot of the fantasy novel in which she finds herself. Meanwhile, the monk continues to pursue the main character. He ran up to the girl and said that she always creates only problems by doing as she pleases. This is unacceptable. The main character does not listen to her annoying pursuer at all. She thinks about why she lost her voice and still cannot speak. The plot of the novel has ended, but Ariadalina can neither be cured nor leave this world. It looks like some kind of cunning trap. The monk who was chasing the girl noticed that she suddenly started crying. This made the man stop his moralizing, which he was showering on the main character. Suddenly, Crown Prince Luciano appeared near the cathedral, accompanied by his wife, Princess Dorothea. The holy noblewoman asked the monk why he was pestering the unfortunate Ariadalina and making her cry. The confused monk did not expect such a turn of events. He looked guiltily at the holy princess and does not know what to answer her. The main character continues to cry, not understanding what is happening here. Princess Dorothea quickly approached Ariadalina and asked her what had happened here and why she was crying so bitterly. Could it be that this despicable minister of the church had dared to offend the unfortunate girl? The king's holy daughter tries to calm her charge, but she fails. She can't help the main character in any way. The princess's healing power didn't work, so she lost Ariadalina's trust. The main character tries to answer the holy princess Dorothea, but this only causes a new attack of pain in the girl's throat. Ariadalina wants to tell the king's daughter that she wants to be left alone and allowed to leave this world in peace. Saint Princess Dorothea cannot understand what the main character wants to tell her, and this circumstance greatly upsets the aristocrat. After the incident at St. Beryl Cathedral, the king's daughter went to her chambers to think about how she could help the unfortunate girl. The holy princess tries to understand why her healing magic did not work. The king's daughter remembered what the scars on Ariadalina's neck looked like and realized that the unfortunate girl had tried to leave this world several times. It was just awful. Now the holy princess guessed why her healing power had not worked. The young princess's husband approached her and asked the girl what she was thinking about so much now. He had not seen his wife so puzzled for a long time. Perhaps she had some problems that the crown prince did not know about. Crown Prince Luciano guessed that his wife was worried about Ariadalina's health. He said that he had decided to come to the monastery to support the unfortunate girl after the official announcement of Carlosian Denabes' engagement to the princess. Crown Prince Luciano's wife listened to him attentively and said that she understood him perfectly. She was always ready to support her husband in such good deeds which were aimed at fulfilling the divine will. The holy princess thought for a moment and said that for the sake of Ariadalina's health, she needed to be sent to the capital of the empire immediately. If the girl found out that her former fiancé was soon getting married in the monastery where she was staying, it could kill her. It will be very difficult for Ariadalina to recover from such a strong blow, which will completely paralyze her will and fuel her disappointment in life and the people around her. On the same day, Crown Prince Carlosian and Saint Princess Dorothea decided to visit the main character in her monastic cell. The girl did not expect such important guests to visit her. The main character looks at her guests carefully and tries to understand what they want from her again. Lately, the Crown Prince and his wife have been catching Ariadalina's eye too often. Saint Princess Dorothea approached the main character, who was sitting on the bed, and greeted her, expressing her admiration for the fortitude with which the girl resisted life's adversities. After this, the king's daughter asked Ariadalina to show her wound again. Princess Dorothea examined the scars on the girl's neck and said that she would try to heal her again. These words surprised the main character and made her wary. The holy princess began singing her healing song to cure the protagonist's throat. Ariadalina is both fascinated and irritated by this singing. The girl listens to the enchanting notes that are supposed to heal her, but she does not believe for a second in the success of this attempt. She thinks that she wants to be alone and not waste time. Saint Princess Dorothea is completely focused. All the power of the aristocrat is embodied in her enchanting voice, which spreads throughout the monastic cell. Suddenly, the aristocrat stopped singing because she realized something very important. She looked at her patient carefully and tried to collect her thoughts. Saint Princess Dorothea is one step closer to solving her problem. She wants to understand at all costs why her magical healing does not work in Ariadalina's case. Crown Prince Luciano's wife suddenly stopped the healing session and thanked the main character for her assistance and time. Ariadalina cannot understand what is happening now and why the princess is behaving so strangely. The main character thought that if the holy princess leaves, she should take her husband with her, who does nothing but watch everything that happens. But Crown Prince Luciano decided to stay this time to talk to Ariadalina when his wife came out of the monastic cell. He asked the main character why she was attracting so much attention to herself. Perhaps the girl wanted to get to the capital of the empire as soon as possible. The aristocrat watches the girl closely to track her reaction to his words about a trip to the capital of the empire. Meanwhile, the holy princess went to visit the abbot of the monastery where the main character was imprisoned to tell him that she wanted to pick up the girl and take her to the capital's temple. The abbot of the monastery did not understand at first what was going on and why the aristocrat wanted to take Ariadalina to the capital of the empire. But the holy princess told the monk that he had not taken good care of the unfortunate girl, who had already made several attempts to part with her life. The monk tried to say something in his defense, but the aristocrat did not want to listen to his stupid and meaningless excuses. The girl said that the church minister should not blame everything on the unfortunate Ariadalina, who had already suffered a lot due to the negligence of the local monks. The temple attendant looked at the holy princess carefully and immediately realized that further arguing with her was pointless and could only make things worse. So the monk said that he would fulfill the aristocrat's will. Princess Dorothea finished her conversation with the priest and left his office. In the corridor, the aristocrat met her husband, who had been looking for her for several minutes. The holy princess is not feeling well after meeting the cleric. This visit caused the girl many negative emotions. She called her husband when she noticed him in the hallway. Crown Prince Luciano told his wife that she shouldn't worry so much about a criminal who used black magic to curse a man. The Holy Princess replied that it wasn't that simple. Today, during the session, she realized that Arya was using dark magic on herself as well. It took a lot of energy from the healer. The Saint Princess's husband was very surprised when he heard these words. He did not expect that the poor nun who was trying to kill herself could be so strong in the realm of using black magic. Crown Prince Luciano began to get nervous. He decided to return to the main character's cell to arrest her, try her, and execute her for using dark magic. The Holy Princess decided to stop her husband immediately. She told the Crown Prince that he did not understand the most important thing. Black magic affects the souls of those who use it, destroying them from within and causing great suffering. The aristocrat thought for a moment and added that a person in whose soul such a fierce battle between good and evil is taking place cannot cope with this problem on his own. He needs the help of others. The Crown Prince's wife wants to save the soul of Arya, who is now literally one step away from falling into the abyss of hell. The Holy Princess said that the constant feeding of the soul with black magic indicates that Arya wants to end up in a real hell, from which there will be no way back. Crown Prince Luciano listened carefully to his wife and said that he could not understand how Arya was able to learn dark magic and develop these skills to such a level. The Holy Princess said that she noticed during today's session that her ward had changed. She had become different inside, as if someone else was living in Arya's body. But the reason for this is unknown to the aristocrat. The Crown Prince's wife added that something so terrible had happened in Arya's life that she had decided to lock herself in the abyss of hell forever, experiencing eternal torment. Crown Prince Luciano listened carefully to his wife and said that he now understood everything. The Holy Princess wanted to take Arya to the capital's temple because the local priest could not stop her. The Holy Princess is glad that her husband understood everything. The girl smiled at the Crown Prince and said that the situation is aggravated by the fact that Arya's parents were unable to help her in time for obvious reasons. The Crown Prince listened attentively to his wife's parting words, sighed heavily, and said that he would take the unfortunate girl to the capital's temple so that she could receive all possible help there. After some time, the main character was able to once again experience all the delights of the endless mercy of Crown Prince Luciano, who decided not to stand on ceremony with the criminal who wields black magic. Arya realized that she was in for a not very comfortable journey to the capital of the empire. To avoid any unforeseen circumstances and unpredictable actions by the prisoner, the Crown Prince ordered the girl to be locked in a cage in order to transport her to the capital's temple. Just before leaving for the capital of the empire, the Holy Princess Dorothea came to the main character and told her that she would no longer allow the girl to mock her and would tear her from the tenacious clutches of the dark forces. Arya did not quite understand what her interlocutor wanted to say when she spoke of some dark forces. But the girl understands that she definitely does not want to stay in this monastery any longer. The main character sits in her cage and thinks that no one in the capital of the empire will be happy about her appearance, because she is a criminal whom society has branded with its condemnation and contempt for using black magic. Before Arya was banished to a monastery, all imperial media reported that the girl had used black magic to torment the Holy Princess Dorothea. Now all the inhabitants of the state hate the main character. The unfortunate girl became bored in her iron cage and asked the guard for a sheet of paper and a pen so she could write a letter. The compassionate guard decided to fulfill Arya's request and gave her everything she asked for. The girl thanked the man for his help. A few minutes later, the main character wrote a letter that would serve her well in the future. But that moment had not yet arrived. When Arya finished her letter, she noticed that she had arrived at the capital's temple. This majestic building always caused the main character to be delighted and amazed. The prisoner left her cell, and one of the guards decided to untie the ropes that bound her hands. This brought the girl some relief, but the obstinate girl had long since hatched an escape plan in her head. That was why she wanted to go to the capital of the empire so much. It was easier to get lost in the crowd of townspeople here. As soon as the inattentive guard untied the rope that tied Arya's hands, she immediately ran away to quickly find a secret refuge and never again be seen by those who know her. The main character quickly runs along the park alley of the capital's temple. The girl is glad that she has nothing more to lose and nothing to fear in this hateful life, which has given her only pain and suffering. Arya runs to the lake, which is nearby. From the plot of the novel she read, the girl knows that Carlosian should now be walking near this lake. The main character also knows that at this moment her fiancé will be thinking about Princess Dorothea, whom he loves. The main character ran to the temple lake and met her lover there. The girl loudly called Carlosian Denabes, which confused him a little. Arya looks closely at the young aristocrat, who is not very happy to see her in this place now. The girl understands this perfectly well, but she urgently needs to talk to her fiancé. Sitting in a prison cell, the main character wrote a letter to Carlosian Denabes. Now is the right time to hand this message to the young aristocrat. Perhaps this will be able to influence his attitude towards the unfortunate girl who feels unrequited love for the young aristocrat. The main character approached her fiancé, who was very surprised when he saw her near the temple pond. The young aristocrat thought that the girl was now in the monastery, serving her sentence for using black magic against the holy Princess Dorothea. Arya greeted her lover and handed him a letter that she had managed to write while sitting in an iron cage on the way to the capital's temple. This message contains important information that will help the girl regain the favor of her beloved man. The main character looks at her fiancé with a look full of love and devotion. The girl sincerely hopes that Carlosian Denabes will now take the letter from her and read it. Arya fiancé read a short note that she was holding in her hands. In this message, the girl asks Carlosian Denabes to kill her. The young aristocrat was very surprised when he read the letter and asked his bride how she ended up in the capital's temple. The main character cannot answer her interlocutor because she cannot speak now. The alarmed aristocrat assumed that Arya appeared in the capital's temple to harm Princess Dorothea again. Carlosian Denabes said that he was fed up with all this and that he intended to end it immediately. After that, the young nobleman grabbed his sword to kill his bride. This is exactly what the girl needs from her groom. Suddenly, the guards who were chasing the main character intervened in the tense situation and finally managed to find her in the vast territory of the temple park. The young warriors noticed that Carlosian Denabes was standing next to Arya. They stopped in indecision because they did not know what to do next. The main character noticed that the guards were not even trying to stop the young aristocrat who grabbed his sword and wanted to kill her. Now, the unfortunate Arya understands that everyone wants her dead, because it will only make things easier for everyone. Well, that's good. The girl is quite happy with this. But for some reason, she felt a little offended that no one loves her. Carlosian Denabes raised his large and sharp sword above his head to swing it better. After that, the young nobleman brought the heavy blade down with all his might on the main character. The blow was fast, strong, and precise. Arya felt her body cut by the cold steel in her fiancé's hands. Finally, the girl's dream came true, and she dies at the hands of her beloved. The main character fell on the grass of the temple park. The girl is in a state of shock. She feels almost no pain and is preparing to leave this world. Arya thought that she never had time to know what true love is. Carlosian Denabes looks at his unfortunate bride and does not regret what he has just done. The young aristocrat believes that Arya deserved such a death. The main character looked at her beloved one last time and said that she was very grateful to him for freeing her from this terrible life. These words were given to the girl with great difficulty. After that, Arya left this world with the hope that this was happening for the last time. But the hopes of the unfortunate girl were not destined to come true. She was reborn again and woke up in her bed. The holy Princess Dorothea leaned over the main character, trying to wake her up. Arya came to her senses. She looks closely at Princess Dorothea and tries to understand what she is doing here and why she is currently next to the main character. The girl rose on her bed. She tries to figure out where she is now and why she was reborn again. After all, after her death at the hands of her beloved, Arya should have left this world forever. But this did not happen. Princess Dorothea said that she was very glad to see the main character in good health. She thought that the unfortunate girl would never be able to come to her senses. After that, the king's daughter took a notebook and a writing pen to hand them to her interlocutor. With these things, Arya would be able to answer the princess in writing. The main character took the notebook and pen from the holy princess to write her a few words right away. It took the girl a few seconds, asked the princess in writing whether she had saved her from death or whether someone else had done it. This question puzzled the king's daughter. The holy princess answered the main character's question in the affirmative. She added that Carlosian Denabes had treated the girl very badly. This did not paint the young nobleman's reputation in a good light. The main character asked her interlocutor another question. The girl wrote on paper the question of why the holy princess decided to save her. These words surprised the king's daughter very much. Ariadalina's interlocutor looked at her carefully and said that she could not act otherwise. She decided to help the unfortunate girl who had been treated terribly by Carlosian Denabes. The main character listened to the holy princess and wrote on paper that there were guards next to her, but she did nothing to stop Carlosian Denabes. This puzzled the king's daughter. The surprised princess said that this simply could not be. The guards had to stop the crime committed by Carlosian Denabes. The young warriors had acted neither according to the law nor according to their conscience. Ariadalina listened attentively to the king's daughter and wrote that all these people wanted her dead. Only the holy princess wanted the unfortunate girl to still be alive. This is a very dangerous and sad situation. After that, the main character wrote that the king's daughter had every right to hate her. Therefore, she should do as everyone else, leave Ariadalina alone and never interfere in her life again. The holy princess does not share her charge's opinion. She is about to leave the room to give the girl a chance to rest. Maybe then Ariadalina will start to think differently. The king's daughter left the room. The main character was left alone. She was sitting on her bed and bitterly lamenting her fate. The girl was at a loss and did not know what to do now. Ariadalina can't understand why she was reborn again. She was supposed to die at the hands of her fiancé and never return to this world. But somehow everything turned out the other way around. Suddenly, Carlosian Denabes entered the room. The young aristocrat decided to visit his fiancée after he tried to take her life. Perhaps the nobleman wanted to ask the girl for forgiveness. Carlosian Denabes looked closely at the main character and asked her if she was awake and how she felt now. A young nobleman entered the room and said that he was very sorry about what had happened recently. He was in a state of affect and did not know that the holy princess Dorothea was taking care of the girl. The main character looked closely at her fiancé and thought that he came to apologize only because he was sent here by the king's daughter, who has a strong influence on him. Ariadalina continues to look at Carlosian Denabes. The girl thought about how this man cut her with his sword and thought that now a simple apology would be enough for her to forgive him. But it is not so. The main character thought for a moment and decided to shake hands with this young nobleman, who she needed now. Only Carlosian Denabes could stop her endless reincarnations. Ariadalina shook her guest's hand in the hope that he truly regretted his actions. But the girl understands that her fiancé would be happy to get rid of her. Carlosian Denabes shook his bride's hand and looked at her carefully. It seemed to him that this girl, who could not speak now, was asking the young aristocrat to kill her. The girl stares at the man she has always loved very much. But this young aristocrat rejected her love and gave preference to the holy princess. The main character thought that her death would not upset anyone in this world. Suddenly, Ariadalina grabbed both of her fiancé's hands and pulled them to her neck. The young nobleman cannot understand what this strange girl, who behaves so unpredictably, wants from him. The main character continues to hold Carlosian Denabes' hands and smile. She asks him with an inner voice to strangle her and for all this madness to end. But this time, the young aristocrat did not follow Ariadalina's lead. He freed his hands and said that he would do nothing more with the unfortunate girl who really needed help. Something strange happened to the main character. The girl began to act as if she was possessed by some evil spirit that had just not gotten what it really wanted. This evil entity was dissatisfied and decided to take out its anger on the unfortunate girl. Carlosian Denabes looked at his bride and realized that something very strange was happening to her. He thought that at this moment, Ariadalina did not belong to herself, but to someone else. The young aristocrat decided not to tempt his fate once again and quickly left the main character's room so that no more unpredictable things would happen. Ariadalina is left alone in her room. She sits on her bed and thinks that she has chosen the wrong strategy for dealing with her fiancé. Perhaps she should be more accommodating with him. Carlosian Denabes found himself back in the temple park after meeting the main character. He looked around and remembered everything that had happened to him and his fiancée a few hours ago. When the young nobleman struck his bride with a sword, the holy princess Dorothea intervened. She appeared at that very moment, but did not have time to prevent the deadly blow of the blade. The king's daughter immediately rushed to the wounded girl and began to complain about Carlosian Denabes for his stupid and cruel act. Saint Princess Dorothea said that it was she who sent Ariadalina, who had changed a lot recently and had taken the path of correction, to the capital temple. The young aristocrat does not understand what the king's daughter is talking about now. Crown Prince Luciano's wife hurried to use her healing magic to heal the wound that the unfortunate girl had just received. This time, the Holy Princess's healing power worked, and the main character, thanks to her, remained alive. After that, Dorothea asked the guard to take Arya Delina to the temple and find a suitable room for her. Carlosian Denabes looked at his bride, who was being carried away in the arms of a guard, and he felt very sorry for her. He told the Holy Princess that he would immediately apologize to the unfortunate girl when she came to her senses. The young aristocrat understands that this will not be enough for the main character to forgive him, but this is all he can do at the moment. In addition, Carlosian Denabes wants to know the real reason for his meeting with the bride, because this situation seemed very strange to him. Saint Princess Dorothea looked intently at her admirer and said that he should apologize to Arya Delina only sincerely and in no other way. Carlosian Denabes listened carefully to the king's daughter, thought for a moment, and said that he would do it from the bottom of his heart. After that, he turned and looked at the capital's temple, as if asking the gods for support. The young aristocrat thinks about his fiancée and her strange behavior. He was sure that the unfortunate girl had escaped from the monastery to once again carry out her next evil plan and harm the Holy Princess Dorothea. Carlosian Denabes, a few hours after the incident in the temple park, recalls his meeting with the main character. Something elusive is bothering the young aristocrat, and it seems to him that Arya Delina is up to something bad again. The nobleman remembered the half-mad and joyful look of his bride when she pulled his hands to her neck so that he could strangle her. It was all very strange and suspicious. Carlosian Denabes did not understand why the girl was so eager for him to kill her. A young aristocrat stands in the temple park in the middle of a beautiful colonnade, and a rational explanation for everything that is happening now begins to form in his head. Carlosian Denabes gathered his thoughts and came to the logical conclusion that his bride had simply gone mad and was no longer aware of her actions. This thought greatly saddened the young aristocrat, but it also put everything in its place. The next day, the main character appeared before the high priest, who said that he felt a powerful aura of dark magic around the unfortunate girl. Arya Delina was enslaved by evil forces. The main character is kneeling before the minister of the church and attentively listening to his words. The girl does not understand why the high priest is so hostile towards her. Arya Delina looked at the priest, and he seemed very influential to her, but not trustworthy. For some reason, the unfortunate girl did not like this man. Saint Princess Dorothea intervened in the tense situation. She said that Arya Delina does not use dark magic to influence other people. Therefore, the unfortunate girl deserves help and forgiveness. The high priest looked at the holy princess and said that he could not allow Arya Delina to deceive Dorothea again, who was distinguished by her kindness and trust. But the king's daughter replied that the unfortunate girl had changed while in the monastery, and her repentance was sincere. The main character listens attentively to the conversation between the holy princess and the high priest, and understands that she is not going to repent of anything, because she did not commit any bad deeds. The holy princess told the high priest that she wanted to know the reasons why dark magic had taken possession of the unfortunate girl's soul. The priest replied that he could not allow evil forces to remain without his control. The king's daughter listened attentively to the great high priest and said that she would not allow anyone to harm Arya Delina. She would do everything in her power to do so. The high priest looked at the main character and said that he was sentencing her to death. This would help stop the dark magic and solve the problem at its source. The main character was very happy when she heard the words of the church minister. Perhaps the death penalty will help the girl stop the endless series of her reincarnations and torments. Arya Delina realized that she needed to say a few words to the high priest and the holy princess Dorothea. But for this, she would need paper and a writing pen. The main character tugged at the uniform of the guard standing next to her so that he would pay attention to her. This had its effect, and the guard looked at the girl with bewilderment. Arya Delina made signs that she needed 3 sheets of paper and a writing quill to communicate with the great high priest and the holy daughter of the king. The guard immediately understood what the mute girl wanted from him. The man gave the main character everything she asked for, and the girl immediately began writing her words on paper to show them to her interlocutors. When Arya Delina finished writing her words on the paper, she rose from her knees and walked towards the high priest and the holy princess to hand them her note. This greatly alarmed the guard and the great high priest. The king's holy daughter reprimanded the main character when she approached the high priest and placed her note in front of him. "You can't behave so casually in the capital's temple. It is necessary to follow the established official regulations. The great high priest and Princess Dorothea read the note that Arya brought them. The message states that the main character is a person who deserves to die. The letter also mentions that Arya wants to be beheaded only by her beloved Carlosian Denabes. This is the unfortunate girl's last request, which she has every right to make by law. The main character's fiancé is also present at this event. He heard the contents of the note that the high priest read out loud. This surprised the young aristocrat very much. His suspicions about Arya grew even stronger. The girl was planning something bad. The high priest and the holy princess are in a state of mild shock after reading the unfortunate girl's note. They did not expect such a turn of events. The main character looks closely at her beloved, and it seems to her that she is doing everything right now. This method of stopping the eternal reincarnations must definitely work, because the holy princess will no longer heal her after the official execution. Arya knows for sure that the only person who can truly kill her is her beloved Carlosian Denabes. No one else can do it. The main character tried to say a few words to her fiancé, but she couldn't because the girl's throat had not yet recovered from the injuries she had received. The unfortunate girl grabbed her throat and regretted 1,000 times that she had made another attempt to speak. It had come at too great a price for Arya. But the main character is no stranger to pain in this life. Arya cried again, but not because of the pain, which began to subside little by little. The main character is in pain because she still cannot speak. Therefore, she feels absolutely helpless and alone. The unfortunate girl again had an attack of uncontrollable melancholy, which was now very out of place. The holy princess noticed this and immediately rushed to Arya to console her in her difficult moment. The main character looks at the great high priest and wants only one thing. The unfortunate girl dreams of all her torment ending as soon as possible. To do this, the high priest must immediately approve her death penalty. Saint Princess Dorothea still hopes to correct the situation. She ran to the main character to calm her down and addressed the great priest with her admonitions. The high priest feels confused. He has not yet made a final decision about Arya and her future fate. The king's holy daughter wants to take advantage of this circumstance. Princess Dora has once again interfered with the main character's plans, which are aimed at her leaving this world. The holy daughter of the king does not want the main character to even think about it. She will fight for the life and soul of the unfortunate girl until the very end. The main character is now in a state of deep depression. It seems to her that she has only one chance to end her suffering. It is death at the hands of her fiancé. Saint Princess Dorothea turned to the high priest, who had not yet made a decision on Arya execution. The king's daughter said that the unfortunate girl had the right to one last chance to understand everything and repent. In this way, she would be able to save not only her life, but also her soul. The high priest listened to the admonitions of the holy princess. He thought for a moment and said that he needed some time to think things over and make his final decision. After the audience with the high priest, the main character went to her room. The high priest, the holy princess, and Carlosian Denabes went to a separate room to discuss the situation. The high priest began the conversation by recalling Arya as she had been in the past. She was a very proud woman who had never bowed her knees to anyone, and moreover had never said that she deserved to die. The holy princess listened attentively to the high priest and said that she did not know why Arya had changed so much. But the unfortunate girl was suffering greatly. Her body was covered with many scars and wounds that she had inflicted on herself while trying to leave this world. Carlosian Denabes added that his fiancé constantly wants him to kill her. This is all very strange and brings to mind some cunning plan of Arya. The young aristocrat is very puzzled by the behavior of the main character and wants to figure out why she is behaving so strangely. Maybe dark magic has nothing to do with it at all. Carlosian Denabes is confused by the fact that his fiancé wants to die by his sword. Arya must know about the special properties of this blade. Maybe that is why she wants to die by her fiancé's sword. The great priest said that the blade of Carlosian Denabes is one of 2 legendary swords that are associated with the founding of the great empire. The sword of the crown prince Luciano, which is called alopecia, originally symbolizes purification and light. And the blade of Carlosian, which bears the name Deslotea, became a symbol of punishment for sins and the darkness that always lies in wait for the human soul to take possession of it. Saint Princess Dorothea said that according to ancient legends, whoever dies from the dark sword will immediately fall into the hellish wastelands. In addition, all owners of this blade will sooner or later suffer from mental disorders. The king's daughter thought for a moment and added that if Arya used dark magic, it was no wonder that she believed in these ancient legends, the truth of which could not be verified. The high priest listened carefully to the holy princess and said that Arya constantly cast dark magic on herself and tried to do everything to leave this world, causing great harm to her body and soul. The high priest looked intently at Duke Carlosian and added that now the unfortunate girl wanted to use the young nobleman's dark blade to die and go to hell. The holy princess told the high priest that many people talk about deserving death, but only a few are able to follow this path in practice. The king's daughter thought for a moment and said that Arya had changed a lot. This unfortunate girl should be given a second chance to atone for her sins and repent. Only then can she save her soul. The high priest listened attentively to his interlocutor and said that he had known Arya since childhood. This girl had a kind and pure heart. The high priest added that Carlosian bride had grown up in the temple, so she was filled with grace and had a bright soul. But something had happened to the unfortunate girl, and she had taken a shaky and dangerous path. The high priest thought for a moment and said that he would certainly take care of Arya. But now the holy princess must return to her husband, Crown Prince Luciano, who is probably very worried about his wife and misses her. The king's daughter listened to the Holy Father and was very happy that her intercession had had its effect. The high priest would not sentence the unfortunate girl to public execution. The holy princess thanked the high priest for listening to her. Duke Denabes is also glad that his bride will not be sentenced to public execution. He thought for a moment and decided to approach the high priest with his request. The young nobleman asked the high priest if he could stay with Arya to keep an eye on her constantly. Carlosian Denabes thinks that the girl is up to something bad again. The high priest listened attentively to the duke and thought that this nobleman did not respect his bride at all. The high priest felt sorry for the main character because she was in love with such a bad man. The Holy Father added that he wanted to speak with Arya first. After that, he would be able to give a precise answer to the duke's question. Carlosian Denabes listened attentively to the high priest and agreed with his decision. After some time, the great priest decided to visit the main character. He brought with him a young novice named Drance. This young man will look after the unfortunate girl and help her in everything. The main character didn't like this idea at all. The unfortunate girl hoped that the high priest would sentence her to public execution and she would die from the sword of her fiancé. But the execution was canceled, and now some young man will be constantly next to Arya. It's just awful. All these events upset the unfortunate girl very much. She grabbed her head with her hands and began to beat in hysterics. The main character cannot utter a single word, but her behavior showed that she is very unhappy with the decision of the high priest. The Holy Father gently stroked Arya and said that she should never again think about leaving this world and going to hell. He would do everything to ensure that this never happened. After that, the high priest ordered the novice Drance to immediately report to him if anything happened to the main character. Arya thought that she had been assigned not an assistant, but a supervisor. This made the unfortunate girl groan in pain. But another unpleasant surprise awaited the main character. When the Holy Father left the room, the girl looked closely at her assistant and realized that he had a very cruel character. Novice Drance noticed Arya intense gaze and immediately decided to establish his dominance here. He approached the unfortunate girl, roughly grabbed her by the hair, and told the main character to behave well. Otherwise, she would be punished for her bad behavior. This plunged Arya into deep shock. Several days have passed since the main character was assigned a warden. Arya suffers from beatings inflicted on her by the church novice Drance. Now the unfortunate girl has fallen to the floor because the cruel young man has hit her again. Arya warden stands next to her, massaging his bruised wrist, with which he had struck the unfortunate girl. Novice Drance said that he was sickened by the fact that such a terrible person as his ward, who had tried to curse the holy Princess Dorothea, was next to him. The cruel youth would not wish such a terrible fate on his enemy. The main character looks with hostility at her overseer, who has just hit her. The girl remembers every blow that the cruel novice inflicted on her, so that she can take revenge on him later. Arya felt her body and realized that over the past few days, a large number of bruises and abrasions had appeared on her body from the beatings of the cruel young man. The unfortunate girl does not understand why during all these days, the high priest has not come to visit her even once. Perhaps there is some evil intent on his part. Warden Drance looked closely at his charge and said that his body began to tremble when he remembered the suffering that Arya had subjected the Holy Princess Dorothea to with her curse. The novice turned to the main character and said that it would have been better for her to die quietly, so that no one would know. He does not understand why the girl made a theatrical performance out of this. The main character continues to look at her abuser with hostility. The unhappy girl thinks that she needs to be patient a little and come up with an effective escape plan. Arya believes that her guard has recently begun to lose his vigilance and has begun to beat her less. The cruel young man continues to mock his ward. He said that now Arya will know her place and will behave more submissively. The main character listens attentively to her warden. The girl understands that she has found herself in a very difficult situation, from which it will not be so easy for her to get out. You can't joke with this cruel young man. After this, the novice Drance decided to feed his charge. He threw her a stale loaf of bread as if it were a pitiful little dog. The unfortunate girl took the bread because she was very hungry. Arya looked at her body again and realized that the cruel young man was hitting her in places that were hidden by clothing, so that the bruises and abrasions were almost invisible from the outside. The unfortunate girl decided that she would definitely escape from this torture room as soon as she had the opportunity. A few more days have passed. The main character is locked in a room. She is very bored and does not know how to entertain herself. The main character lies on her bed and now clearly understands why prisoners do not like to serve their time in solitary confinement. The girl thought that the warden Drance had been showing up very rarely lately. Perhaps it was time to escape from this torture room. Suddenly, a cruel novice entered the main character's room and brazenly addressed his ward. The girl cannot understand what is happening now and why her overseer is so excited. Drance quickly approached Arya and grabbed her by the hair. The unfortunate girl tries to resist, but she can't. The cruel young man continues to hold his charge by the hair and complains that he has just been humiliated by the high priest for some minor offense. The main character understands that the overseer wants to take out his resentment and anger on her. Suddenly, the cruel novice's gaze was filled with hellish hatred for the unfortunate girl, and he hit her hard in revenge for all his misadventures. The main character felt a strong blow from the warden and fell to the floor near her bed. The unfortunate girl can do nothing in this situation. She is absolutely helpless and cannot oppose anything to the maniac in the cassock of a priest. Arya lies on the floor. She is in great pain, not only physically but also mentally. She cannot get used to such terrible humiliations from the pathetic novice, who continues to complain about his unsuccessful life. The cruel overseer said that today he was ridiculed by other priests because he spends his precious time taking care of the main character. The cruel young man was silent for a moment and said that Arya was hated by everyone in this temple and that she should die quickly. Meanwhile, the main character clearly realized that she could no longer tolerate all this bullying and humiliation of the young maniac in a priest's cassock. The unfortunate girl must immediately escape from this torture room. Arya instantly came up with a plan on how to do this. The main character took advantage of the pause and grabbed a heavy chair that was standing next to her. After that, the girl, with all the strength she had left, hit her tormentor on the head with this chair. A strong blow from a heavy chair made of natural wood did not deprive the young maniac of his senses, but it stunned the cruel warden of the main character and knocked him down. The girl hastened to take advantage of this circumstance and quickly ran out of the room, which she had come to hate. The main character quickly runs down the corridor and thinks that she did the right thing. Now the unfortunate girl needs to find the high priest and talk to him frankly. Arya continues to run to find the great priest and tell him everything. But the capital temple is very large, so it will take some time. Suddenly, the main character noticed that she was being chased by a cruel warden, who had almost managed to catch up with the unfortunate girl. To make matters worse, Arya glanced back and let her guard down, causing the unfortunate girl to trip and fall, hitting the ground hard. Suddenly, the main character felt that the cruel young man had caught up with her and grabbed her by the leg to hold her back and prevent her from moving further. The eyes of the maniac in the priest's cassock lit up with a mad fire again. He was very happy that he managed to catch up with his unfortunate victim, whom he would now punish for disobedience with all his characteristic zeal. Arya looks at the mad cleric in surprise and understands that she is going to die. But before that, she will have to endure terrible torments. Overseer Drance will definitely take care of that. A maniac in a priest's cassock leaned over the unfortunate girl. He was already preparing to deal Arya a fatal blow that would end her earthly torment. The main character can no longer run anywhere, so she humbly prepared herself for death. The unfortunate girl closed her eyes so as not to see the mad church minister who wanted to kill her. She only had to endure one moment and it would all be over. Suddenly, the heroine's fiancé intervened in this critical situation. He was watching his bride to expose her. But fate decreed that Carlosian saved Arya from death today. The young aristocrat quickly approached the priest, who was mad with anger and hatred, and asked him what he was going to do on the holy ground of the capital's temple. The maniac in the priest's cassock did not lose his composure and hastened to justify himself to the duke. He said that he wanted to punish the impudent girl for hitting him with a chair and trying to escape from his supervision. The young aristocrat stares at the cruel warden. He says that a monk cannot commit violence on the territory of a sacred monastery. It is blasphemy, which will be followed by a cruel punishment. Novice Drance said that this girl was a notorious sinner, so she deserved punishment wherever she was. Carlosian looked closely at his bride's cruel overseer and asked him if the high priest had not told him that he should take care of Arya. The cruel novice became embarrassed by the young duke's words and began to say something unintelligible, trying to justify himself. But Carlosian would not listen to the excuses and justifications of the wretched monk who dared to offend his bride. The young duke ordered the novice Drance to immediately shut up and accept his fate with dignity and humility. The nobleman then took out his legendary sword and scabbard to punish the impudent monk for his vile actions. Warden Drance realized with horror that this was the end for him, and he would be sent straight to hell. The main character looks at everything that is happening in surprise. The girl is glad that her cruel tormentor will receive a worthy punishment. But Arya also regrets that the sword of Carlosian will not strike her body now. The young duke's bride gathered her strength and managed to prevent the execution of the impudent monk. The girl stood between Carlosian and the cruel novice and told her fiancé to stop immediately. Carlosian does not understand why Arya stood up for her tormentor, risking her own life. The young duke asked his bride why she did this, but the proud girl can't answer her fiancé. She stands with a sword at her injured throat and confidently looks into the eyes of the young aristocrat. After a few seconds, Carlosian lowered his sword because he liked the noble act of his fiancé, whom he always considered a complete egoist. But in fact, the main character did not stand up for her tormentor. She just wants the duke to kill her with his sword. The main character's fiancé looks at her closely and thinks that she has really gone mad. Carlosian sheathed his sword and said that he would not kill anyone today. But the impudent monk would definitely receive the punishment he deserved. After these words, the young aristocrat looked closely at his bride and noticed something strange. The unfortunate girl was covered in bruises and abrasions. The duke decided to take a closer look at the bruises on his bride's face and was outraged by what he saw. Someone had beaten Arya severely and more than once. Carlosian asked the unfortunate girl what had happened to her face and the delicate skin all over her body. Let Arya try to explain it with sign language. The young duke stares at the main character's face and begins to have guesses about who could have beaten the unfortunate girl. Carlosian stroked his bride's cheek and said that she had a fresh bruise on her face. It required special attention. After this, the young aristocrat looked at the despised monk, who was kneeling before him, and realized that now his life was hanging by a thread, and he was one step away from his death. The main character looks at her lover attentively. The unhappy girl wants to tell the young duke that everyone and everywhere treats her with hatred and cruelty because she deserves it. Carlosian pushed his bride aside and approached the pitiful monk, who just a few minutes ago felt his power over the unfortunate girl and allowed himself all sorts of mockery of her. Warden Drance noticed the duke approaching him. He raised his head and smiled stupidly at the young nobleman. Carlosian placed his foot on the shoulder of the wretched monk to show him his true position at the moment. The warden humbly accepted this humiliation. The young duke felt disgusted by the miserable monk, and he wanted to immediately cut off the head of this despicable minister of the church with his sword. But the main character intervened in the situation again. She grabbed her fiancé by the hand and prevented him from fulfilling his desire. Carlosian turned and looked at his bride. He understood what the unfortunate girl wanted from him. The main character looked meaningfully into her fiancé's eyes again. This made the young duke change his anger to mercy. He decided not to kill the pathetic monk for now. The young aristocrat resigned himself to his bride's request and said that he would postpone the execution of the despised minister of the church until a more suitable time. But Carlosian cannot understand that his fiancée has not only stood up for the despised monk. The unfortunate girl wants him to kill her with his blade. The main character stares at her fiancé, but cannot tell him of her desire. The young duke looked at Arya and said that he would not try to kill the miserable monk again today. But it seemed to Carlosian that the unfortunate girl wanted something else from him that he could not understand. The nobleman was fed up with the whole tense situation. He grabbed his bride by the hand and headed into the temple with the unfortunate girl, leaving the despised church minister lying in a humiliating position in the middle of the alley. The main character is in a state of shock. She wants Carlosian to finish the job and kill her immediately. But the young aristocrat does not understand this and takes his bride to the temple. A few minutes later, Carlosian and Arya appeared before the great priest, who was calmly sitting at his desk and sorting through some papers. The main character did not expect such a development of events, so she was very surprised when she found herself in the high priest's office. The high priest turned away from his important documents and deigned to turn his attention to the visitors. The high priest greeted the young duke and his companion and asked about the purpose of their visit to him. The minister of the church took a closer look at the main character and noticed that she was covered in bruises and abrasions. After that, the high priest got up from his desk and came closer to the unfortunate girl to examine her injuries. The high priest realized that Arya had been systematically beaten for several days. He asked the unfortunate girl what had happened to her and who had dared to raise a hand against her. Carlosian intervened in the conversation. He told the high priest that he had promised to take care of Arya. But this did not happen. The main character listens attentively to her fiancé and understands that at the moment he is protecting her. The girl did not expect such actions from a man who previously despised her. Arya decided to use her pen and paper to engage in conversation with the high priest and the young duke. The girl does not want to be left out at this moment. A few seconds later, the main character wrote a short message and showed it to her interlocutors so that they could read it. Arya was at it again. The unfortunate girl wrote in a letter that she wanted to know what day her execution was scheduled for. The main character's stupid note made the high priest and the duke turn away from their conflict. They turned all their attention to the unfortunate girl. The great priest turned to Arya and said that he would not allow her to die, so the girl should immediately stop thinking about such things. Carlosian said that he would look after his bride while she was within the walls of the capital's temple. But the high priest must ensure that no one knew about this. In particular, Lady Dorothea must not know about it. The cleric listened attentively to the young duke and agreed with his proposal. The high priest also promised to keep this information secret from everyone. The main character listens attentively to her interlocutors and cannot understand what they are talking about now. The girl hopes that her fiancé wants to carry out her execution. Carlosian was about to leave the high priest's office, but he paused for a moment and told the high priest that he must punish the monk who had been watching over Arya. The cleric replied that he would certainly do so. The main character looked at the high priest in surprise and realized that the situation had now changed in her favor, thanks to the young duke. Carlosian turned to his bride and said that she must go with him now. These words surprised the main character, who still cannot understand what is really going on. As Arya and her fiancé were leaving the capital's temple, they heard that the local monks had already learned of the incident with Overseer Drance and were now gossiping about it. The main character looked closely at Carlosian and thought that the young aristocrat would now take the unfortunate girl to some secret place and execute her there. The unfortunate girl was very happy when she thought about this and said to herself that she was always ready to leave this life, but only if Carlosian executed her. The young duke continues on his way, and his bride follows him. The girl is delighted that Carlosian is leading her to a secret execution. Suddenly, the companions saw something very remarkable. First, they heard the trembling voice of the novice Drance, who said that he was not guilty of anything and asked for forgiveness for everything. After this, the main character and her fiancé saw a despised monk kneeling before the high priest and begging for mercy. He said that Arya was a devilish woman who needed to be executed immediately. Warden Drance added that he had done nothing wrong to the girl he was looking after, but she deserved to be treated harshly for the sins she had committed. The main character looks closely at the despised monk, and she feels sick from what she sees now. It's just a disgusting picture. The unfortunate girl agrees with her guard that she deserves to die. But the mere sight of this miserable man disgusts the main character. Suddenly, the main character noticed that the young duke was heading towards the despised monk. This surprised and frightened the unfortunate girl. She guesses why Carlosian Denabes was heading towards this man. The young duke drew his magic sword from its sheath. The nobleman's eyes blazed with cruelty. He turned to the despised overseer and said that he should have kept silent, as Carlosian Denabes had recently ordered him to do. But the monk had violated the nobleman's order, and he would pay dearly for it. The high priest tried to intercede for his monk, but it was too late. The fire of hatred and rage burned in the eyes of the young duke. Carlosian Denabes looked hard at the high priest and told him to step aside immediately and not interfere with his administration of justice. The despised monk saw Carlosian Denabes with a magic sword in his hand and began to humiliatingly ask forgiveness for his cruel actions towards the unfortunate girl he was supposed to look after. But the young duke's patience and mercy ran out. With a deft and swift blow, the nobleman silenced forever the talkative monk who dared to stand in the way of Carlosian Denabes and contradict him. The main character looks closely at her fiancé and how he punished the despised monk for his insolence and cruelty. The girl regrets only that she was not in the place of this maniac in a cassock. Arya looked at the dead monk and thought that the young duke was very good with his magic blade. The girl probably wouldn't suffer for long if Carlosian Denabes dealt her a similar blow. After this, the main character looked closely at her fiancé and asked him with her eyes to do to her the same thing that he did to the despised monk. The young duke watches his bride and her reaction to the execution of the cruel monk. Carlosian Denabes does not understand what the unfortunate girl wants from him. The main character's fiancé once again came to the conclusion that his bride had simply gone crazy and that her stupid antics should not be paid attention to. Arya continues to stare at the young duke. She wants him to kill her immediately with his magical blade and end all her suffering in one fell swoop. The main character approached the young duke and the high priest. The girl was very upset about what had just happened. Arya looked at the executed monk and began to cry. The girl could not understand why she was not in the place of this unfortunate man. The main character is overcome by deep depression. The unhappy girl does not understand what she is doing in this world and why she cannot leave this life. Carlosian Denabes hurried to calm his bride down so that she could come to her senses and collect her thoughts. The young aristocrat was afraid that the main character would soon have hysterics or some kind of mental attack. After this, the main character's fiancé decided to take her away from this place. He does not want the unfortunate girl to continue to traumatize her psyche by looking at the executed monk. The high priest ordered his subordinates to quickly remove the body of the murdered monk and not to tell anyone about what they saw today. Otherwise, they would end up in the place of this unfortunate man. The monks are in a state of deep shock. But one nun began to pray for the soul of the murdered warden and thought that Arya had somehow burst into tears over the body of the man who wanted her dead. It was all very strange. Meanwhile, Carlosian Denabes and his bride are seated in a luxurious carriage to go to the young duke's estate. The main character looks at her fiancé carefully and tries to understand what he is thinking about now. Arya is also very interested to know where Carlosian Denabes is going to take her. Maybe he decided to execute her again far away from people and not tell anyone about it. The young aristocrat remained silent the entire way. When the carriage arrived at its destination, Carlosian Denabes ordered his ward to immediately exit the carriage. The main character looked at her fiancé carefully. The girl hopes that he brought her to the place of execution, and now all her suffering will end. As the unfortunate girl was getting out of the carriage, Carlosian Denabes offered her his hand to help her down and escort her to his home. The main character had already realized that the young duke had brought her to his family estate. The aristocrats headed straight for the main entrance to the Duke of Denabes' mansion. A quick and helpful butler was already waiting for the young nobles at the door, who respectfully greeted his lord and mistress. Carlosian Denabes told his butler that Arya would be staying in the outbuilding. The servant was to immediately prepare a suitable room for the lady. These words greatly surprised the butler. The main character really liked that the young duke called her lady. The unfortunate girl had not heard such an address addressed to her for a long time. Perhaps now everything will change. The puzzled butler asked his master why Lady Arya was back in this house. She was no longer the mistress here after her terrible deed. The young lord told the servant that he should treat the main character as an important guest who was under house arrest. The unfortunate girl listens attentively to the conversation that takes place between the young duke and his servant. Carlosian Denabes told the butler that the lady must be watched constantly. 3 people must always be assigned to her, who will not leave her side for a single step. Arya realized that men speak so freely in front of her because they are not afraid to offend her. This greatly upset the unfortunate girl, who does not want to be under house arrest. Carlosian told his servant that he was going to his study. He would leave all other chores to his butler, who now knew what he needed to do. The young duke headed to his office and thought that Arya had changed in many ways. Today, this unfortunate girl had tried to protect a despicable monk who wanted her dead. This was very different from the old lady Denabez. Perhaps Saint Princess Dorothea has a point. If Arya has changed during her imprisonment in the monastery, then she deserves a second chance to atone for her past sins. Carlosian thought again about his bride and her behavior. Especially today, the young aristocrat was struck by the sincere tears of the unfortunate girl when she saw the executed impudent monk. Suddenly, the young duke stopped and thought about how she was beginning to doubt the absolute sinfulness of her former fiancé. Carlosian thinks that it is too early to think about it, because this treacherous girl tried to kill the holy Princess Dorothea with dark magic. The aristocrat came to the conclusion that it was too early to draw any conclusions about Aryadelina's behavior. This girl should be looked at more closely to understand what she was really up to. Saint Princess Dorothea believes this treacherous girl who wanted to kill her. But Carlosian believes that Aryadelina cannot be trusted. This person is capable of any treachery, and now she is also plotting something. The young duke pondered this question, and suddenly he began to have strange visions again. Carlosian saw the past Aryadelina in front of him, who accused the nobleman of forcing his former fiancée to follow the path of evil. Deep down, the duke knows that the ghostly girl is absolutely right. Carlosian has always loved only the holy Princess Dorothea. His fiancée found out about this and decided to take revenge on her lover for this, cursing the king's daughter with black magic. The young nobleman begins to panic when he begins to have such attacks. Sometimes he feels like he is slowly going crazy because of his visions. The duke approached his office and saw a servant at the door. Carlosian asked where his medicine, which he takes during his panic attacks, had gone. The servant looked at his master carefully and noticed that something was wrong with the duke. He said that the medicine was waiting for the duke in his room. Carlosian entered his chambers. The young nobleman had developed a slight fever and his legs were giving way. He felt very ill. The young duke can't stop thinking about his former fiancée. He can't understand how a decent and well-bred lady could become such a terrible monster and tie her fate to the forces of evil. Carlosian is walking aimlessly around his room. He is unsteady and does not feel solid support under his feet. The young duke grabbed his head and asked the ghostly girl to leave him once and for all. A cunning and malicious voice in the young nobleman's head tells him that Aryadelina is a nuisance that must be destroyed immediately. Carlosian resists this inner voice and orders it to be silent, but an inner voice continues to insistently persuade the young duke to strangle Aryadelina. This girl should not live because she stood in the way of Carlosian Meanwhile, the obliging butler brought the main character to the outbuilding and found a suitable room for her to live in. The servant settled his former mistress in the best rooms that were there. In addition, he prepared a notebook and a writing pen for Aryadelina so that she could communicate with the people around her. The girl did not hesitate and immediately took up the letter. She wrote a short note to the butler in which she communicated her request. The main character asked the efficient butler for a sharp knife and an empty bottle. This request confused the servant a little, and he asked the girl what she would do with these things. Aryadelina smiled sweetly at the butler and informed him that she had something she wanted to put inside the empty bottle. The servant said that he would be happy to fulfill his former mistress's request. After the butler left, the main character began to think about her ex-fiancé. Carlosian had always caused conflicting feelings among all the aristocrats of the empire. There were also always sinister rumors about him. Many people in the empire consider the young duke to be a real maniac and killer who always thirsts for a new battle and blood. Thanks to his magical sword Desletea, the main character's ex-fiancé won hundreds of victories and became known as a great warrior. There are also people who claim that Carlosian suffers from some kind of mental illness. The only person who accepted the contradictory duke for who he was the holy Princess Dorothea. She said that she accepted Carlosian with all his advantages and disadvantages. For the young aristocrat, the position of the king's holy daughter was a real gift from fate. He was not used to such an unbiased attitude. It was at this moment that Carlosian fell in love with the holy Princess Dorothea forever. He told himself then that he would never forget this wonderful girl, even if she married another man and not him. The main character remembered all this information and began to carefully examine the bottle with some mysterious red liquid inside. The girl thought that she could not stand aside while her fiancé was getting closer and closer to the king's daughter. The mysterious vial contained the blood that Arya needed for her next dark spell. This should be enough for her to perform the dark ritual. Deep down, the main character envies her ex-fiancé for loving the holy princess so much. This is a truly bright feeling that not everyone can have. But Arya has no time for that now. She must perform her dark ritual. The unfortunate girl still dreams of dying as soon as possible and ending her reincarnations. She has come up with a ritual that should help her with this. To do this, it is necessary to use special blood, which the main character has been collecting for a very long time. But the whole problem is that all this was invented by the past Arya, who knew everything about black magic. The main character knows nothing about dark witchcraft, so she does not need this bottle and its contents. Arya raised the open bottle in front of her and poured its contents onto the floor to draw a magical symbol. The unfortunate girl decided to focus on a more effective way that would allow her to leave this world and end her torment. After some time, several servants came to the main character's chambers to provide her with their services. They saw the magic symbol that the girl had drawn on the wall and froze in surprise. Arya drew the first symbol that came to her mind on the wall, but she thought that this would be enough for Carlosian to think that she was a real witch and kill her for it. The main character looked meaningfully at the servants who entered her chambers and saw the devilish symbol drawn in blood on the wall. After that, the girl ordered them to immediately call Carlosian. Arya played her role of a real witch perfectly. For a moment, the girl believed that she was a minion of the dark forces. A few minutes later, the young lord appeared in his ex-fiancé's room and immediately realized that she was playing a trick on him, trying to appear as a real witch. Carlosian found the symbol the girl had drawn in blood on the wall of her chambers very strange. The main character stands in front of her ex-fiancé in a strange pose and tries to deliberately show with her whole appearance that she serves the forces of darkness. Real witches do not behave like that. They hide their magical abilities. Arya was very surprised when the young duke asked her why she was doing such strange and useless things. It all looks simply ridiculous. Now the servants will have to spend a long time washing the blood off the wall of this wonderful room. Carlosian said he felt nothing near this devilish sign. Has Arya forgotten how to use dark magic? The young lord looked at his ex-fiancée, who immediately stopped her cheap show when she was exposed. After that, Carlosian turned to his servant and said that Arya had psychological problems, so there was no need to pay attention to her stupid antics. All that was needed was to quickly and quietly clean up everything so that this room could be used normally again. Meanwhile, the main character realized that her cunning plan to die by the sword of Carlosian had failed again. After this, the young aristocrat looked closely at his former bride and decided to teach her a little lesson so that she would not do stupid things anymore. Carlosian gave the main character a short lecture on the rules of good behavior in his house and decided to start treating the numerous wounds that cover the girl's body. The young duke turned to the maid and ordered her to immediately call a doctor who could heal the main character's wounds and perhaps improve her psychological state. Carlosian took his ex-fiancée by the hand and walked with her into another room. The girl tries to ask the young lord where he is taking her, but she is unable to do so. After some time, the young duke realized that he was accidentally hurting the girl and let go of her hand so that she would feel more free. After this, Carlosian ordered his ward to follow him. The girl obediently obeyed her former fiancé. There was nothing else left for her to do. The young duke brought the main character to the chambers of his personal physician, who began treating the scars and wounds that covered the unfortunate girl's body. A few minutes later, Arya noticed that many abrasions and bruises had disappeared from her skin thanks to the doctor's skillful manipulations. The scar on the main character's neck remained. But all the other scars on her face and hands completely disappeared. This greatly transformed the girl, and she began to look much better than before. Suddenly, two stately maids approached Arya and said that the girl needed to follow them. This surprised the main character very much because she does not know where these maids will take her. A few minutes later, the girl found herself in a warm bath. The maids carefully washed away all the dirt and blood from the main character's tender body. During this procedure, Arya felt like a cat that was forced to dive into the water. After the water procedures, the girl was taken to the new apartments where she would now live. The main character liked her new room. The maids who bathed and accompanied the main character treat her very politely and respectfully. But the girl suspects that she is only a burden to them. The maids came out of their mistress's chambers. The main character suddenly realized that she now needed a new plan that would allow her to leave this world forever. But it still needed to be invented. Leaving Ariadalina's room, one of the maids told her colleague that she had taken all the sharp and cutting objects from her mistress's room. The second maid praised her for this foresight. The two maids chatted for a while and came to the common conclusion that the young mistress was behaving somewhat strangely. Therefore, they had to be very careful and vigilant around her. The maids also decided to feel sorry for the unfortunate girl, whose body was covered with many terrible scars. They had always considered Carlosian Dinabe's bride to be a kind mistress who never punished her servants. Therefore, the maids decided that Ariadalina was simply a little tired of her fiancé's dishonest actions. If the young lady would rest a little and take care of her health, her former beauty would return. It would be simply wonderful. The maids decided to help their mistress regain her strength as quickly as possible. In turn, the main character decided not to stop trying to anger her ex-fiancé so that he would kill her. Ariadalina used all the means available to her to do this. But over time, everyone got used to the girl's stupid antics and did not pay much attention to them. This time, Ariadalina wove a human figurine from improvised means and demanded that Carlosian Dinabes be called immediately. The bewildered servants do not know what to do in this situation. They do not want to harm their master and cannot restrain the crazy girl. Ariadalina broke several cups and told no one to approach her until the young duke appeared. The servants surrounded the girl and wanted to calm her down. Suddenly, one of the maids began to pick up the pieces of broken dishes and accidentally injured her finger. The main character noticed this and decided to step on the remaining pieces with her bare feet so that everyone would think that she was possessed by evil forces. The maid looked at her mistress's bloody feet and tried to help her. But the main character stopped the maid and grabbed her wounded hand. Ariadalina was filled with sincere sympathy for the unfortunate servant who had been injured through her fault, and asked the maid if everything was all right with her. The main character understands that the maid is in pain now, but she can do nothing to relieve this pain. Ariadalina is very sorry that this happened. Carlosian Dinabes' bride looked closely at her maid and asked her forgiveness for having hurt her finger through her fault. Suddenly, the young duke entered the room and immediately understood what had happened. He turned to his former fiancée and asked why she had put on this cheap show again. After this, Carlosian Dinabes approached the main character and with one effort lifted her up so that she would no longer hurt her bare feet on the shards of broken dishes. The main character really liked that the young duke had just taken care of her as if she were a small child. This brought back memories of her past relationship with her fiancé, which was sometimes very romantic. Carlosian Dinabes looks at Ariadalina with mixed feelings. The young lord is suspicious of the girl, but some of her actions make the nobleman reconsider his opinion. Suddenly, the main character said that she was fine. First, Carlosian Dinabes had to help the wounded maid who had cut herself on the broken glass. The young lord looked his ex-fiancée in the eye and became angry with her. He asked the unfortunate girl if she realized what a terrible state her legs were in, cut up by shards of broken dishes. But the main character is not going to give up her position. She told her ex-fiancé that he should immediately start treating the unfortunate maid. Carlosian Dinabes was indignant at first, but nevertheless ordered the wounded maid to follow him and his ward, whom he has been holding in his arms all this time. Ariadalina is very happy to have won this small victory over the proud lord. The whole company went again to the duke's personal doctor to treat the wounds of both girls. The doctor was not very surprised by this visit and immediately began to perform his duties. The main character said that she would not be treated until the wounded maid was given first aid. Carlosian Dinabes did not argue and ordered the doctor to examine the maid first. The maid said that Ariadalina's wounds were much more serious than her small cut. But one angry look from the young lord was enough for the maid to stop arguing and immediately obey her master's order. The doctor examined the maid's cut and said that she had received a rather deep wound. This cut needed to be given due attention, otherwise unwanted complications could arise. The maid listens attentively to the personal physician Carlosian Dinabes and thinks that she is now very ashamed that she was angry with Ariadalina. From now on, the maid will treat her mistress with great respect. When the doctor finished treating the maid, he turned his attention to the main character's wounded legs. After the initial examination, the doctor said that he first needed to remove the broken pieces of crockery from the girl's wounds. It would be quite painful, but quite bearable. The doctor began to carefully extract the fragments from the girl's wounds. This frightened the main character a little, and she instinctively leaned against the young duke so that he would support her in a difficult moment. Carlosian de Nabes watches his former fiancée closely. The young duke suddenly realized that Arya was patient in her pain and cared for others before caring for herself. This surprised the nobleman. The young lord also noticed that Arya was holding his hand tightly to feel his support. This circumstance also surprised the duke. It meant that his ex-fiancée trusted him. The doctor did his job brilliantly and said that he was very worried about the main character because she often got various wounds. The girl listened attentively to the doctor and thought that she did not want to bother him anymore. The young duke looked closely at his ward and asked her if she would be putting on another performance today. The main character looked angrily at her ex-fiancé. She realized that the young lord was trying to make fun of her now. This made the girl very angry. Arya decided to write a message to Carlosian de Nabes, in which she told him that she should be killed and everything would end immediately. The young lord read his ex-fiancé's stupid note and said that he would order Arya to be tied up when she was in her room. This would help to avoid any more theatrical performances of the girl with the obligatory self-mutilation in the end. A maid, who had just been treated by the duke's personal doctor, intervened in the conversation. The girl said that she wanted to go to the young mistress's room and clean up the broken pieces of crockery before someone else got hurt. The main character listened to her maid and tried to tell her that she would clean everything up herself, because it was her mistake that needed to be corrected. Carlosian de Nabes told his ex-fiancée that she was causing a lot of problems to completely innocent people with her stupid behavior. The main character looked angrily at the young lord again and thought that her death would solve all the problems in an instant. Carlosian de Nabes was about to leave his personal physician's office, but the young lord stopped and turned to his ward. He said that important guests were to arrive at his estate tomorrow, so Arya would have to behave well. Otherwise, she would be severely punished for her bad behavior. The main character did not expect such a development of events. She thought that Carlosian de Nabes was not receiving any guests now and was living as a recluse. Night has come. Arya does not even think about changing her habits. The girl has come up with a new plan to make Carlosian de Nabes kill her. The main character walks along the night corridors of a huge estate, taking advantage of the fact that no one is watching her now. At the moment, all the servants are busy preparing for tomorrow's visit of important guests. Arya decided to pay her ex-fiancé an unexpected visit at night so that he would get angry with her and kill her. The girl entered the young duke's room and heard strange sounds that puzzled her and made her a little worried. The main character listened carefully and realized that the strange sounds that had alerted her were the groans of Carlosian de Nabes. The duke was currently suffering from another attack of his strange nervous illness. Arya looked closely at the young duke, who was now lying on his bed in a somewhat bent position. Apparently, Carlosian de Nabes was suffering greatly. The unfortunate nobleman continues to moan. His face is covered in cold sweat. He is not aware of what is happening around him. Carlosian de Nabes' gaze is now clouded. The protagonist looks closely at her former fiancé and realizes that she has never seen the young lord in such a terrible state before. Arya thought that the rumors about Carlosian de Nabes' mental illness were true. Before, the girl would never have thought that all this could be real. The main character watches her ex-fiancé closely. The girl sympathizes with the young lord, but does not know how to help him now. Suddenly, Arya remembered the time when she was the bride of Carlosian de Nabes and lived in this estate. Then the girl always spent the night in a separate bedroom at the request of her fiancé. The young aristocrat strictly forbade his bride to enter his room. The proud Arya was offended by her fiancé for this prohibition, and therefore she never entered his room. The main character remembered all these circumstances and realized that Carlosian de Nabes was already ill then. This was simply a terrible discovery. Now Arya understood the motivation for many of her fiancé's actions, which had previously puzzled her. The young duke noticed his ex-fiancé entering the room. He immediately ordered the girl to leave. Carlosian de Nabes does not want Arya to see him in such a bad state. The nobleman felt ill again. He again ordered his former fiancée to leave his room immediately because she did not belong there. The main character is in no hurry to leave the chambers of her former fiancé. This made Carlosian very angry. He again ordered Arya to leave his room immediately and never enter it again. The girl stares at the young duke and cannot move. She is in a state of shock because she never thought that Carlosian suffered from such a terrible mental illness. Suddenly, the main character realized that Carlosian illness is connected to his magic sword, which is endowed with dark power. This information radically changes the girl's previous ideas about the whole situation that has now developed. Arya turned her attention back to the young duke. The girl is thinking about whether she can help him with anything now. The main character thought about the situation a little and, overcoming her fear, decided to come closer to her ex-fiancé. Perhaps she could help the duke with something. A few seconds later, Arya approached Carlosian bed. The young duke noticed this and froze in surprise. He wondered what his ex-fiancé was up to. Suddenly, Carlosian became nervous again. The young duke said that Arya was now taking a great risk because she had not carried out his orders. The girl had to leave the nobleman's room, but she had not done so. But the main character does not pay any attention to the words of her former fiancé. The girl intends to immediately provide the young duke with all possible assistance. Carlosian is silent in bewilderment. He looks closely at the hand that the main character has extended to him. The young lord does not understand what the girl is about to do. A moment later, Arya gently stroked her former fiancé. This touch made Carlosian freeze in surprise. He had not expected such a development. The main character looks at the young duke attentively and is glad that her gentle touch had a positive effect on Carlosian This is already a small victory. The young lord is once again angry at his ex-fiancé for not listening to him at all. The girl stares at Carlosian and realizes that he is now one step away from killing her. The main character continues to gently stroke the young lord. She tried to ask him what it was like to be a mentally ill person. Carlosian could barely make out the words of his night visitor. For a moment, the young lord thought that Arya was simply mocking him and provoking him to murder. But for now, the duke is holding himself in check and not giving in to provocations. The main character looks closely at her ex-fiancé. The girl is now very interested in how strong the pain of the young lord is and whether he can control it by the force of his own will. A voice spoke in the young aristocrat's head again, advising him to destroy Arya immediately so that she would not bother him anymore. Carlosian restrains himself and asks the girl to leave his chambers immediately before something irreparable happens. The main character did not lose her head in the current situation. The girl carefully took her ex-fiancé by the hand and asked him if he wanted to kill her now. Arya behavior and words greatly surprised Carlosian The girl thought for a moment and added that she wanted the young lord to kill her immediately if he really wanted to. Carlosian stared into the eyes of his interlocutor and did not believe that she was saying all these words, which were given to her with great difficulty. The main character does not take her eyes off him and says that she must die immediately from the sword of the young lord. Then he will be able to spend the night peacefully and no one will disturb him. It is very difficult for Carlosian to restrain himself now. But the young aristocrat holds on with all his might. He does not want to kill the unfortunate girl, although the voice in the duke's head tries to convince him that it is necessary to do it immediately in order to find the long-awaited peace. Suddenly, the young nobleman gave in to his emotions. He grabbed his ex-fiancée and threw her onto his bed. The main character did not expect such an action from her interlocutor, so she was a little scared. Carlosian looks at his ex-fiancée and says that she is too desperate for immediate death. This is very strange behavior for a young and beautiful girl from high society. After this, the young duke began to strangle the main character. The girl does not resist. She is glad that she finally got her way and was able to provoke Carlosian to murder. An annoying voice continues to sound in the young lord's head, encouraging him and forcing him to immediately finish off his ex-fiancée. Carlosian clutches his head and continues to resist the influence of the ghostly voice that is trying to provoke him to commit murder. But the main character does not allow Carlosian to loosen his grip. The girl asks the young lord to finish the job and kill her. This will give him the peace he longed for. The young duke's spiritual struggle continues. He does not want to kill his former bride, but evil demons push the unfortunate aristocrat to this terrible crime. Carlosian gritted his teeth with tension. The young duke no longer had the strength to resist his inner demons, which had won a final victory over him. The nobleman leaned over the unfortunate girl and continued to strangle her, redoubling his efforts. He would definitely finish what he had started and finally find the long-awaited peace. Ariadalina felt herself beginning to choke. The life force was gradually leaving the body of the unfortunate girl who had achieved her goal and was dying at the hands of Carlosian Denabes. The main character's body began to thrash about in its final death throes, which showed that the inevitable end was already very close. Soon, everything would be resolved, and the young duke would be freed from the presence of the annoying girl. Ariadalina almost lost consciousness. She thought that Carlosian Denabes was innocent. The main character decided to take all the blame for this terrible crime on herself. Meanwhile, Carlosian Denabes' eyes were filled with an expression of madness. The young lord had now become a merciless demon who could only destroy and kill. Finally, the main character managed to croak that it was all her fault, and the young aristocrat had nothing to blame himself for. Carlosian Denabes heard the last words of his bride, which did not touch him at all, because he was not aware of his actions now. In an instant, it was all over. The main character's convulsions ceased, and her body immediately went limp. The unfortunate girl had achieved her goal. She died at the hands of Carlosian Denabes. Ariadalina woke up in severe pain, lying on the grass in an unfamiliar place. The girl felt a gaping bloody wound on her chest and stomach, received by some sharp-cutting weapon. But this is not what worries the main character now. The girl realized that she was reborn again and did not end up in hell. This should not have happened because Ariadalina died at the hands of Carlosian Denabes. The unfortunate girl touched her deep wound on her stomach and noticed that her ex-fiancé was standing next to her. She couldn't understand what was happening now. With her clouded gaze, the main character managed to see Carlosian Denabes standing next to her. The young lord holds his magic blade in his hand, which is naked and covered in blood. Ariadalina thought for a moment and realized that she was revived at the very moment when the young lord wounded her in the temple park. The girl cannot understand why she is still alive. After that, the main character lost consciousness. After some time, the young duke's ex-fiancé came to her senses again. But this time, she was in the capital's temple, lying in her bed. The holy princess had already managed to heal Ariadalina. The main character came to her senses a little and noticed that Carlosian Denabes was sitting next to her bed. The young aristocrat was keeping an eye on his former fiancé. This circumstance greatly surprised the unfortunate girl. Last time, Saint Princess Dorothea was at Ariadalina's bedside, healing her, healing the terrible cut she received from Carlosian Denabes. The unfortunate girl collected her thoughts and realized that everything had been completely different that time. So, for some reason, her past had changed. The main character sat up on her bed and tried to tell the young duke that he was completely out of place here after he had struck her with a sword in the temple park. But the girl couldn't say anything. With these actions, she had disturbed her throat, which had begun to hurt badly again. Ariadalina cannot understand how Carlosian Denabes had the nerve to come to her room after the terrible thing he did. The main character looked angrily at her ex-fiancé and tried again to tell him to leave immediately. But this time, the girl managed to make a few sounds. This surprised Ariadalina very much. The joyful girl covered her mouth with her hands in surprise. Could it be that the main character would soon be able to speak normally? Maybe her previous actions changed reality, and now Ariadalina will have a full recovery. The main character jumped out of her bed and went to the mirror. She wants to check if there are scars left on her neck from old injuries. Ariadalina unwound the bandages on her neck and saw that the hideous scar had almost disappeared. This made the girl very happy. The main character began to laugh. But it was no longer an ordinary silent laugh. The girl began to make loud sounds, and she manages to do this with a little difficulty, although Ariadalina's throat still hurts a little. The unfortunate girl once again had hope that she would be able to speak and sing normally. The main character's heart was filled with joy, and she began to look at her life a little differently. Carlosian Denabes watches his ex-fiancé closely and cannot understand why she is so happy. Perhaps the girl has had another attack. The young lord is very afraid of this. The main character looked at her ex-fiancé and thought that for some unknown reason her reality had changed. Now the girl has regained the ability to speak, but she does not understand why this happened. Ariadalina looked at the young lord again and realized that her reality had changed because she had been killed by Carlosian Denabes. The girl had not expected such a turn of events. She thought that after that she would end up in hell. But it turned out differently. Perhaps all the reincarnations of the main character are somehow connected with this aristocrat. Carlosian watches his charge and tries to understand what she is thinking about now. Perhaps the girl is happy that she was able to survive the blow that the young lord dealt her recently. The main character turned to the young aristocrat and called him her husband. But this did not please Carlosian. He thinks completely differently. The young lord said that he was no longer Arya husband. The girl listened to the aristocrat and said that she understood him perfectly well and would henceforth consider him her ex-husband. Carlosian looked at his interlocutor carefully. He could not understand why she had brought this up in conversation. The relationship between Arya and the young lord had long since ended. The main character looked at her ex-husband and decided to take her chance. She asked Carlosian to kill her immediately. The girl repeated her request once more. This puzzled Carlosian a little. He tries to understand why his ex-wife wants him to kill her so much. But the young lord has no explanation for this. Suddenly, the main character started coughing up blood. Apparently, the girl has not yet fully recovered from the injury she received from the blow of Carlosian sword. The young lord was not at a loss in the current situation. He took out his handkerchief and wiped the blood from his ex-wife's face. Carlosian looked the girl in the eyes and said that he had definitely killed her already. Therefore, she had nothing to worry about anymore. The aristocrat thought for a moment and said that after killing the main character, he felt like he had returned to the past. The young duke does not know how it happened, but the feeling was very real. The main character listened attentively to her interlocutor and was very surprised when she heard his words. The girl cannot understand what exactly her ex-husband means. Arya tries to say something to her interlocutor, but she starts coughing again. The girl thought that Carlosian was reborn with her, but this still needs to be proven. The young duke looked closely at his ex-wife and invited her to sit down to discuss the current situation, which seemed rather strange. After this, Carlosian suggested that his interlocutor use a notepad and a writing pen during the conversation so that she would not strain her throat. The girl accepted her ex-husband's offer and thanked him for his concern. The main character wrote in her notebook that she does not know why Carlosian was involved in a chain of endless reincarnations. This circumstance greatly surprises the girl. Carlosian read his interlocutor's message and asked her why she seemed so calm now. Previously, Arya was constantly in an agitated state. The main character replied that she was very calm now because she had been reborn dozens of times. This information surprised the young lord very much. He never thought that such a thing was possible. Carlosian was even more surprised when Arya told him that she had already been reborn about 100 times. The young lord tries to understand what his ex-wife felt and experienced during this time. It must have been very difficult for her to go through all of this. The aristocrat looked at his interlocutor and was struck by the innocent expression on her face. He realized that he had not realized how difficult the situation was for Arya Carlosian was a narcissistic and blind fool. The current situation upset the young lord very much. He covered his face with his hand and thought that he did not know what to do with all this. Carlosian came to his senses a little and said that he now understands that reincarnations are possible. He found himself in the past and now he needs to figure out how to act in the current situation. The main character wrote in her notebook that she did not understand why the young lord returned to the past with her. There could only be two explanations for this. Firstly, it was Carlosian who killed Arya. And secondly, the reason for the young lord's rebirth could be his strange mental illness, which is associated with the blade that the aristocrat uses. The girl thought for a moment and added that before her death, Deslotea's magic sword had lit up with a strange glow. Perhaps this blade had influenced the future fate of Arya and Carlosian. The main character is not sure about this, but everything points to the fact that the magic sword has a mysterious power that the young lord has not yet fully understood. It is worth thinking about. Arya thought for a moment and wrote in her notebook that the magical power of Deslotea's blade could still be used in the future. But first, it was necessary to understand how it worked. Carlosian carefully follows the logical thread of his interlocutor's reasoning. Perhaps the girl is right now, but only practice and time will show whether this is so. The main character told her ex-husband that before this, she always left this world on her own. But this time, Carlosian helped her. This could also affect the reincarnation of the young lord. The aristocrat understood what Arya wanted to tell him. He ended up in the past because he killed his ex-wife with his own hands. His reincarnation was also facilitated by the magical blade and the mental illness it causes. Carlosian thought for a moment and was a little confused. The young lord had conflicting thoughts about Arya previous actions. It seemed to the nobleman that the girl had abused her ability to reincarnate a little. Arya was very surprised by this way of putting the question. She had not expected such a development. Carlosian might hate the girl again if he continued to think like this. The main character wrote to her ex-husband again, asking him to kill her, and then all his problems would disappear at once. But the young duke stopped the girl when she was writing this message. He believes that now everything will not be so simple. Carlosian took Arya notebook from her and looked the girl in the eyes. The main character cannot understand why her ex-husband is so angry at the moment. The young lord's gaze is full of anger and fury. He believes that his ex-wife used him to achieve her goals. Thanks to Arya manipulations, the nobleman was reborn and ended up in the past. It's just terrible. The main character looks closely into the eyes of her ex-husband and tries to understand what he is going to do to her now. Perhaps soon her torment will finally end. Carlosian came close to Arya and asked her if she had really managed to kill herself about 100 times already. How much did the poor girl have to dislike herself to mock herself like that? The main character listens attentively to her interlocutor and only now realizes that Carlosian is absolutely right. She should have been more careful with herself and the people around her. The unfortunate girl tried to justify her unreasonable actions by the despair she had been in all this time. The main character said that in the current situation, only Carlosian and no one else could help her. Arya added that only the young duke would be able to break this endless chain of reincarnations. Carlosian listens attentively to his ex-wife and does not know whether he should now trust this strange girl who has deceived him many times already. The main character continues to insist on her own. The girl said that now Carlosian must kill her again so that she can test her new guess. If it turns out to be true, then the chain of reincarnations will be broken and everything will end. The young lord listened attentively to his interlocutor and said that he did not want to kill her anymore. Therefore, the girl should not ask him about it anymore. The main character looks at Carlosian and can't understand why he doesn't want to kill her. If the girl's plan works, then everything will end immediately and everyone will be happy. The young duke began to get angry with Arya again. He got angry and said that he would never want to become a husband who killed his wife. This was simply nonsense, because not only would the aristocrat's conscience suffer, but also his reputation. The main character listened attentively to her ex-husband and only now remembered that he had a very difficult childhood in psychological terms. These problems are connected with the parents of the young aristocrat. Arya was lost in memories of her ex-husband's family. The Denebes family was considered one of the most noble in the empire. Carlosian had a father named Atrafa Denebes and a mother named Viola Denebes. Atrafa Denebes performed great deeds during the previous war, so the emperor awarded him a magical blade that bears the name Deslotea. It was a fitting reward for a great warrior. But after Carlosian father took possession of the magic blade, a terrible tragedy happened in his family, which the young duke witnessed with his own eyes and could do nothing about. Deslotea's dark sword also had a negative impact on the psyche of Atrafa Denebes. He personally strangled his beloved wife Viola Denebes in front of his own son. It was a terrible tragedy that greatly traumatized the young boy's fragile psyche. Carlosian will never forget the mad expression on his father's face as he strangled his own mother. It will never be erased from a person's memory. The unfortunate boy tried in vain to stop his maddened father from killing his wife, but the dark blade had already taken possession of his soul. Therefore, Atrafa Denebes could not be stopped. Atrafa Denebes turned his attention to his son, who tried to stop him. After that, he threw the boy away and continued to strangle his beloved wife. As she died, Viola Denebes only managed to utter her son's name. After that, the unfortunate woman left this world, leaving Carlosian an orphan. The boy looks at this whole horrible picture and feels miserable and insignificant because of his powerlessness. He could not help his own mother, and she died before his eyes. Little Carlosian could only hide under the bed where his father had strangled his mother. The boy was so scared that he could not think of anything better. After the dying mother's moans ceased, The only sound in the room was the very heavy breathing of Atrafa Denabes. The boy covered his mouth so that no one would hear his cries. Carlosian Denabes could only pray that his father would come to his senses soon. When dawn came, the boy crawled out from under the bed and heard the terrible cry of his father, who realized what he had done because his mind had returned. Carlosian Denabes looks at his father carefully and cannot understand what is happening to him now. Atrafa Denabes is acting very strangely. A moment ago, the Duke was screaming in horror as he realized what he had done that night. Now, Atrafa Denabes stands silently in front of his little son, smiling strangely. Maybe he has simply gone mad. The Duke's eyes were filled with stingy male tears. Carlosian Denabes decided to call his father to ask him how he was feeling now. But Atrafa Denabes cannot talk to his own son now because he feels a huge sense of guilt. A new plan has been born in the Duke's fevered brain, which he intends to immediately implement. Carlosian Denabes is watching this. The little boy looks at his father and is unable to stop him because he is in a state of deep shock. In a few moments, it was all over. Carlosian Denabes realized that his crazy father had just left this world by jumping out of the window. The boy was in a stupor. He could neither speak nor move nor cry. After a few minutes, the little Duke came to his senses a little and looked at his mother's cold body. At that moment, the boy realized that he was now completely alone. Little Carlosian realized that his mother would never caress him again, and his father would never take him in his arms. From now on, he is an orphan. It is simply terrible. After some time, the servants entered the room. They saw the lady's body on the bed and asked the boy what had happened here that night, but Carlosian Denabes could no longer answer his servants. The boy's tender, childish psyche was so overloaded with the experiences and stresses he had experienced that the unfortunate child simply lost consciousness and fell to the floor unconscious. The main character remembered the tragedy of the Denabes family and realized that she was a real fool because she forgot about this important event in the life of her ex-husband. The girl looked closely at Carlosian Denabes and realized that the young Duke was currently in a depressed state. His psyche was already suffering from the influence of the magic blade, and then there was this strange return to the past. Such events would make any person sad. The main character hastened to do everything to calm her ex-husband, and also sincerely asked him for forgiveness for having involved him in this crazy story with endless reincarnations. Carlosian Denabes listened carefully to Arya and asked the girl why she was now asking him for forgiveness. It was not her fault that she found herself in this situation. The young lord thought for a moment and said that his ex-wife had changed a lot. Before, she had been rude and independent, but now Arya had become kinder. The main character looks intently at the aristocrat and is glad that he has noticed changes for the better in her. The girl thought for a moment and decided to confess to Carlosian Denabes that she was not actually Arya and had accidentally ended up in her body. But then she changed her mind because she was afraid that the young lord would simply not believe this incredible information. The main character said that Carlosian Denabes knows nothing about her, despite the fact that they were once husband and wife. But it's never too late to fix it. The young lord listened carefully to his interlocutor and realized that she was now telling the truth. He was too preoccupied with himself and his love for the holy princess Dorothea, and almost did not devote time to his wife. Arya added that it hurt her a lot that Carlosian Denabes was not interested in her personality and life. If things were different, the girl would feel much better. The young lord felt that his attitude towards his ex-wife was beginning to change. Previously, Carlosian Denabes had not even suspected that Arya suffered so much from his lack of attention. The main character looks at her interlocutor attentively and understands that her words have slightly embarrassed the young lord. The girl decided to clear her throat to interrupt the awkward pause that has now reigned. Carlosian Denabes came to his senses and said that he was very sorry for causing his ex-wife so much pain. The girl replied that she had always been indifferent to the young lord, and this upset her very much. The aristocrat listened attentively to his interlocutor and thought about her words. Perhaps Carlosian Denabes really was paying attention to the wrong things. The young lord wanted to tell his ex-wife that he would now change his attitude towards her and be more attentive and courteous. But the main character did not let the aristocrat say this. Arya informed Carlosian Denabes that she was now satisfied with everything. She had already gotten used to the young lord's rudeness and indifference. Therefore, the girl was not particularly upset by this situation. The main character laughed and said that she had learned to live in difficult conditions, which no longer frightened her at all. She was grateful to fate for becoming much stronger and more experienced than she had been before. Carlotiana de Nabes listens attentively to her interlocutor and realizes that he has been unfair to her. This girl begins to arouse the young lord's admiration. She reasons well and holds her ground in difficult life situations. The young aristocrat remembered what Arya was like before her transformation. She was a very proud and spiteful girl who always thought only about her own interests. The evil duchess always tormented other people and got real pleasure from it. And no one could cope with the angry and selfish girl who poisoned the lives of people around her. Carlotian de Nabes remembered all this and thought that during his marriage to Arya, he had not even tried to look at her from a different perspective. But now everything had changed. The young lord looks at his ex-wife and realizes that in front of him is a completely different young lady, whom he does not know at all. Carlosian de Nabes wants to get to know the main character better. The nobleman thought for a moment and said that he would take Arya to his family estate. Today he would inform the high priest about this, who must approve this idea. Carlotian de Nabes added that he would not allow the local priests, whom he did not trust, to mistreat the main character. Arya appreciated the words of her interlocutor. The girl liked the proposal of her ex-husband. After that, the young aristocrat left the main character's room to deal with current affairs. Also, Carlosian de Nabes now has something to think about. He is still in a state of mild shock, but he is already quite capable of reasoning logically and analyzing the information received. The young lord paused for a moment and thought about his ex-wife. Was it really his fault that Arya wanted to leave this world forever? Maybe something could still be fixed. Time would tell. Also, Carlotian de Nabes is interested in the answer to the question of why his ex-wife has changed so much and turned into a completely different person, who instead of rejection and hatred evokes only good emotions. All this looks very strange from the outside. The young aristocrat recalled the soft and kind expression on Arya face, who was known throughout the empire as the evil criminal who tried to kill the holy princess Dora with dark magic. Something didn't add up here. Therefore, Carlosian de Nabes needed to sort out this whole mysterious situation. Arya ex-husband walks down the corridor of the capital's temple. He is lost in his thoughts about his ex-wife and how much she has changed. Suddenly, Saint Princess Dorothea appeared in the corridor of the capital's temple. The girl saw Carlosian de Nabes and called him loudly to attract the attention of the young lord. The king's daughter approached her admirer and asked how Arya was feeling now. The young lord replied that his ex-wife was feeling fine. Saint Princess Dorothea replied that she was very worried about the unfortunate girl who had received such a terrible wound today from the magic sword of Carlosian de Nabes. The young lord listened attentively to his interlocutor and decided to ask her about one important thing. Carlosian de Nabes said that he did not know how the holy Princess Dorothea felt about his ex-wife. He wanted to know this information. The king's daughter was a little surprised when the young duke asked her about this. The girl asked why Carlosian de Nabes was interested in this now. The young lord replied that he was simply curious to know. The holy princess thought for a moment and tried to formulate her answer as precisely as possible, to be as truthful as possible in the current situation. Finally, the girl understood how to formulate her thought more correctly. The king's daughter told her interlocutor that Arya always reminded her of an abandoned kitten who needed help. Carlotiana de Nabes listened attentively to the holy Princess Dorothea and asked her why she compared his ex-wife to an abandoned kitten. The girl was a little confused because she did not know what to answer the young lord. A few moments later, the king's daughter looked at Carlotian de Nabes and said that everything Arya had done was just an attempt to escape from her own pain. This answer interested the young duke. Saint Princess Dorothea thought for a moment and added that the unfortunate girl always struck first because she wanted to protect herself. That was how she was used to interacting with the people around her. The king's daughter recalled Arya behavior in public and said that every time she hurt someone, she herself experienced unbearable pain. This was evident in her eyes. Carlotian de Nabes said that his ex-wife had cursed the holy Princess Dorothea, and he did not understand why she supported Arya. But the girl replied that she was aware of the guilt of her rival, who had already paid enough for her evil deeds. But life is such that we have to forgive our enemies in order to become purer and kinder ourselves. Therefore, the king's daughter no longer holds a grudge against Arya for her unfriendly attitude towards her. Moreover, the unfortunate girl had objective reasons for this. Carlosian Denabes listened attentively to his interlocutor and understood that by the objective reason the king's daughter meant precisely his secret love for the holy Princess Dorothea. The young duke once again pondered the personality of his ex-wife. He realized that a rather complicated and contradictory situation had developed. Suddenly, Carlosian Denabes remembered the image of his dying mother and his ex-wife when he strangled her and realized that they behaved the same in similar situations. Thoughts got confused in the head of the young lord, but he understands that he touched something very important. The answer to all his questions that have tormented the duke since childhood is very close. Saint Princess Dorothea decided to distract her interlocutor from deep immersion in his thoughts. The girl thought for a while and said that she regretted her inattention because she failed to notice Ariadalina's problems earlier. The king's daughter looked closely at Carlosian Denabes and said that his ex-wife also regretted a lot now, so he simply had to give her a second chance. The young duke listened attentively to his interlocutor and said that he would listen to her advice. These words greatly pleased the holy Princess Dorothea, who sincerely wants to help in this situation. Carlosian Denabes thought again of his ex-wife and thought that he could not yet trust her completely. The feeling that Ariadalina could deceive him at any moment did not leave the young duke. The lord thanked the holy Princess Dorothea for the interesting conversation and useful advice. After that, the young duke bowed and went on about his business. After some time, Carlosian Denabes took his ex-wife to the family estate and provided her with a luxurious room and all possible benefits. The main character took a bath, ate a delicious meal, and settled down on her bed to rest a little. Ariadalina understands that she still needs to think about a lot. Events are happening too quickly and unpredictably in the current situation, but now the girl wants to get some sleep. A few minutes later, the main character fell asleep. The young duke's ex-wife slept for a few hours and woke up with a terrible headache, which seemed to her to be the worst she had ever experienced in her life. The unfortunate girl assumed the fetal position from the unbearable pain that squeezed her head. The main character cannot understand what is happening to her now and why her head hurts so much. A strange voice began to sound in Ariadalina's head, saying that Carlosian Denabes had abandoned the unfortunate girl and brought her much suffering. Therefore, she must immediately kill her ex-husband. Meanwhile, the young duke is in his office. His personal assistant reports to Carlosian Denabes that his ex-wife went to bed before dawn. Apparently, the girl is very tired and needs rest. The valet also reported that everything was ready in Ariadalina's room for her comfortable stay. The girl would not need anything. Carlosian Denabes ordered his personal assistant to prepare his medicine. The young duke thought that it was a full moon, so he should expect an exacerbation of his mental illness. The main character's ex-husband began to carefully study an important document and thought that today he would be able to fall asleep only with the help of his proven medicines. But this is only a temporary measure. The young lord wants to find a quality solution to his problem and be cured of the disease forever. Suddenly, Carlosian Denabes found that his magic sword began to emit a magical glow. This is not good. Perhaps it is worth paying special attention to. The young duke looked closely at his magic blade and realized that something strange was happening. Deslotea's sword had never behaved like this before. This had to be dealt with immediately. Otherwise, unexpected problems might arise. Carlosian Denabes noticed another thing. The magic blade began to glow, but the young lord did not experience any symptoms of his mental illness. This is a very strange phenomenon. This has never happened before. Suddenly, the young lord's personal assistant burst into his office without knocking and said that something very unpleasant had just happened. Carlosian Denabes urgently needed to go with the servant. The valet added that the young lady had developed symptoms of the same illness that Carlosian Denabes suffered from. This information greatly surprised the young lord. He had not expected such a development. Carlosian Denabes hurried to his ex-wife's room. When the young lord entered the duchess's chambers, he saw that the servants were trying to calm her down and holding her hands, because the girl had become hysterical. The young duke looked closely at Ariadalina and immediately realized that she was now experiencing the same symptoms that were characteristic of his mental illness. Carlosian Denabes was not at a loss in the current situation. He quickly ran to his ex-wife and took her hand so that she could not hurt herself. After that, the young lord turned to Ariadalina. The duke told the unfortunate girl that she needed to try to pull herself together immediately. These attacks would soon pass. They just needed to be endured. The main character looked closely at her ex-husband and called his name in a trembling voice. Ariadalina looked deep into Carlosian Denabez's eyes and saw the same pain in them that she was feeling now. The young lord felt this mental contact with his ex-wife. Carlosian Denabez immediately understood why Ariadalina was now experiencing the symptoms of his mental illness. This illness was transmitted to the unfortunate girl during her next reincarnation. The young lord realized the danger of the situation and shouted loudly to his personal assistant to immediately bring his medicine, which the lady urgently needed to take. The efficient servant had prepared the medicine in advance and handed it to his master. Carlosian Denabez took the medicine from the valet's hands and tried to give it to his ex-wife so that she would take it immediately. The main character continues to experience unbearable pain. The unhappy girl does not listen to her ex-husband and continues to resist his attempts to give her medicine. The young duke is starting to get angry about this whole situation. Ariadalina doesn't want to obey him, so Carlosian Denabez can't give her a sedative. The duke ordered all his servants to leave the young duchess's chambers immediately. After that, Carlosian Denabez made another attempt to give his ex-wife the medicine. But this time, the nobleman did it in a special way. Carlosian Denabez opened the medicine bottle and took some of the healing liquid into his mouth. This would help the young lord achieve the desired result. After this, the duke came close to his ex-wife and kissed her. Thanks to this technique, the medicine got into the mouth of the unfortunate girl, and she swallowed it without resistance. Ariadalina stares at her ex-husband and can't understand what's happening now. The girl really enjoyed Carlosian Denabez's kiss, but the medicine hasn't fully taken effect on her body yet. Carlosian Denabez looks closely at the unfortunate girl and tries to understand whether the sedative has worked on her. The young lord knows that the drug will not work instantly, but it is highly effective and will definitely help the main character overcome her attack. Suddenly, Ariadalina began to beat her ex-husband in the chest with her hands and express all the grievances that had accumulated over a long time. The girl said that Carlosian Denabez's bad attitude towards her made her a very unhappy person. The young lord tries to keep Ariadalina from doing anything rash. He says that the girl needs to take care of her wounded hands. The main character does not listen to her ex-husband. The girl cries and says that she loves the young lord very much and wants him to love her as much as she loves him. Morning came. Ariadalina woke up and felt the warmth of her ex-husband. The girl felt as if Carlosian Denabez was sleeping with her again, as he had done during their marriage. The main character lies on her side and thinks that she should get rid of these memories so as not to torment herself once again. But the girl only needs to turn around to understand that Carlosian Denabez really spent this night next to her. He lies next to Ariadalina because he did not want to leave her alone. The unhappy girl sat on her bed and thought that everything was lost for her now, because yesterday she confessed to her ex-husband that she still loved him. The main character cannot understand why she said this. Therefore, she is very angry with herself for such a rash act. Suddenly, Carlosian Denabez spoke up and asked Ariadalina how she had slept that night. The girl had not expected such a turn of events and was very confused when she heard her ex-husband's voice next to her. The main character decided to pretend that nothing had happened and that she had not confessed her love to her ex-husband yesterday. After that, the girl turned to the young lord and wished him a good morning. Carlosian Denabez looks closely at Ariadalina and cannot understand why she is behaving in such a strange way now. After this, the young aristocrat asked his ex-wife if she remembered what happened last night. The girl stares at Carlosian Denabez and does not know what to answer him. A few moments later, the main character said that she did not remember anything about yesterday's incident and turned her attention to her ex-husband's hands. They were covered with scratches that Ariadalina had inflicted yesterday during her attack. Carlosian Denabez got out of bed and said that he should take care of his hands. The main character asked her ex-husband what happened last night. The young lord did not explain anything to his ex-wife. He simply told her to look at her hands, which had suffered greatly yesterday. The main character turned her attention to her hands and only now realized that they were covered with many scratches and abrasions. This surprised the girl very much. A few minutes later, Carlosian Denabez called his personal physician, who was immediately ordered to attend to the wounds on the young lady's hands. The owner of the estate decided to wait until the doctor had cured his ex-wife and then give him his wounds for treatment. The young duke watches Ariadalina closely. He thought for a moment and said that the girl had completely stopped coughing and was speaking well. The main character listened to her ex-husband and touched her throat. The girl realized that Carlosian Denabez was absolutely right. She does not feel pain in her throat and speaks normally without any discomfort. After this, Ariadalina asked the doctor for a mirror so she could look at her throat. The girl wondered if her old scar had disappeared. A few moments later, the main character was able to see for herself that the scar on her neck had almost disappeared. But this time, it was not Carlosian Denabes who was the cause. Ariadalina decided to test the strength of her restored voice and began to loudly pronounce various vowel sounds. This caused the main character's throat to ache again and she began to cough. The doctor immediately forbade the girl to experiment with her voice. Carlosian Denabes watches everything that is happening. The young lord thought for a moment and asked his ex-wife why she was so worried about her voice. It seemed very strange from the outside. The main character answered Carlosian Denabes that if her voice was restored, she would be able to sing again. These words surprised the young owner of the estate. He did not know that his ex-wife loved to practice singing. Ariadalina thought for a moment and decided to tell her ex-husband a lie. The girl lied that she fell in love with singing when she was in the monastery. It gave her strength in difficult moments of her life. Carlosian Denabes listened attentively to the main character and said that now everything became clear to him. He is glad that Ariadalina has a useful hobby that helps her overcome difficulties. When the young lord's personal physician had finished his work, Carlosian Denabes invited his ex-wife to have breakfast and discuss the situation. The girl happily agreed to the Duke's proposal. During breakfast, the main character said that after her last reincarnation, she had the same mental illness as Carlosian Denabes. These words angered the young lord a little. He does not like to talk about his illness. The girl immediately apologized for her rashness and tactlessness. After this, Ariadalina asked the Duke to tell her more information about Deslotea's magical blade. Perhaps this would shed light on the reasons for both aristocrats' mental illness. Carlosian Denabes thought for a moment and said that Deslotea's magical sword was imbued with dark magic and had a detrimental effect on all its owners. This had been the case since the blade was created. The young Duke added that during the day this blade looks ordinary, but when night falls, especially during the full moon, Deslotea's magical sword begins to emit a dark glow that affects its owner. Carlosian Denabes looked closely at his interlocutor and said that the magic sword could have a particularly strong effect on those people who were connected with black magic. The main character immediately realized that her ex-husband was talking about her. But the girl did not lose her head and said that she was in no way connected with black magic and had never cursed the holy Princess Dora with such powers. Carlosian Denabes listened attentively to his interlocutor and said that she still could not admit her guilt. The girl replied that she had nothing to justify herself to the young Duke, but the owner of the estate began to get angry with Ariadalina again. He believed that the girl wanted to deceive him again. The young lord abruptly put his cup of tea on the table and said that he did not want to hear anything more about it. After this, Carlosian Denabes looked intently at his interlocutor and ordered her to immediately go to her room. The main character did not continue this pointless argument. The girl quickly left the young lord and headed to her chambers. Ariadalina was fed up with the fact that her ex-husband began to go crazy every time the conversation touched on the holy Princess Dora. The girl thought that Carlosian Denabes was only pretending to give her a second chance. He could at least pretend to believe his ex-wife. But the young lord would never do that. This whole situation has upset the unfortunate girl very much. She stands in the corridor and again bemoans her hard fate. Will Carlosian Denabes never believe that Ariadalina is innocent and that she never cursed the holy Princess Dorothea? Meanwhile, very interesting and important events unfold in the Imperial Palace, which will have a great influence on the fate of all the heroes of this story. A young aristocrat admires the gorgeous flowers in her luxurious chambers, which smell especially good today. The girl asks her maid about the latest news. The noble lady's name is Elmondi Borovicia. She is the princess of a great empire who loves to weave her secret intrigues. Now the aristocrat wants to know the latest news from her maid. The maid humbly bowed her head before the powerful lady and said that she had heard that Lady Ariadalina had returned to the capital after being imprisoned in a monastery. Elmondi Borovicia continues to admire the flowers and listens attentively to the report of her maid, who said that Lady Ariadalina is now living in the ancestral estate of Carlosian Denabes. The maid fears that this news will greatly upset her mistress. Therefore, she trembles with fear when she tells this to the proud princess, who wants to marry Carlosian Denabes. But Elmondi Borovicia holds her anger well and pretends that this information is not important to her. After that, the princess laughed and said that the young duke had always been distinguished by his quirks. Lady Almondy decided to go to the other end of her large room. She asked the maid who followed her if she had spread the rumors about the engagement of the Duke and the princess. The maid answered in the affirmative. The whole empire was discussing this news. Princess Elmondi Borovicia is sitting on the sofa. She continues to admire the plucked flower and talks about her engagement to Carlosian de Nabes. If the young duke does not decide to do this, the emperor will intervene in the situation to save the honor of his daughter. After this, Lady Almondy thought that Carlosian de Nabes had dared to bring his ex-wife into the house where he had lived with her before. This made the princess extremely angry, and she crushed the beautiful flower that she had been admiring all this time. Elmondi Borovicia calmed down a little and collected her thoughts. After that, the princess ordered her maid to bring one important thing from the storage. The maid immediately began to carry out her mistress's task. When the maid left, the young princess continued to think about Carlosian de Nabes' ex-wife. She repeated the name Arya several times and scattered the petals of the flower she had just crushed onto the floor. After that, Elmondi Borovicia stepped on the petals that had fallen to the floor and said that she must immediately remove Lady Arya from her path. She was preventing her from taking possession of Carlosian de Nabes. Meanwhile, the main character also thinks about Princess Elmondi. The girl remembered her meeting with this insidious and selfish lady who dreams of taking possession of the young duke. During that meeting, Elmondi Borovicia told Arya that she should know her place and not stand in her way. In the princess's opinion, Carlosian de Nabes should belong only to her, and the main character was just a convenient pawn used by the cunning aristocrat. Arya walks quickly around her room and thinks hard. The girl knows that the real culprit of the crime against the holy princess Dorothea is Elmondi Borovicia, who framed the main character. This cannot be left unpunished. The young duchess thought that she could curse the wicked princess and punish her for all her bad deeds. Maybe Arya should learn more about dark magic. Suddenly, the main character heard the voice of the real Arya, in whose body she is. The ex-wife of Carlosian de Nabes began to read magic spells, thus showing that the girl already knows everything about black magic. The Duchess immersed herself in Arya memories of how she used to pray to the dark gods and cast various magic spells. Mysterious ancient spells continued to sound in the girl's head. At that moment, she realized that she had all the necessary knowledge to curse the insidious princess. The main character looked at her hands, which were now emitting some kind of mysterious glow, and remembered that a second ago her lips were moving on their own, casting magic spells. Carlosian de Nabes was watching this scene because he had quietly entered his ex-wife's room a moment ago. The young duke was angry with the girl again because he was now sure that she had knowledge of black magic. The main character saw her ex-husband and said that all this was some kind of misunderstanding. She does not possess black magic and did not curse the holy princess Dorothea. Carlosian de Nabes listened attentively to his interlocutor and looked at her with disdain. The young lord does not believe a single word the girl says. Arya was very upset that the duke did not believe her. The unfortunate girl repeated once again that she did not have knowledge of black magic and had nothing to do with the crime that was committed against the holy princess Dorothea. The main character asked her ex-husband what he would do if she could find the real culprit of the crime. Maybe then Carlosian de Nabes would change his mind about Arya. The young duke listened attentively to his interlocutor and said that if she found the real culprit of the crime committed against the holy princess Dorothea, then he would kneel before his ex-wife and ask her forgiveness. The main character looked Carlosian de Nabes in the eyes and said that he should remember his promise, because one day he would have to answer for his words. Suddenly, something very strange happened to Arya. The girl began to convulse and move away from Carlosian de Nabes. This surprised the main character very much, and she became confused. A few moments later, the young lord's ex-wife realized that evening had come and that she was suffering from a mental illness that had been passed on to her by Carlosian de Nabes. This attack led to the protagonist falling down the stairs that lead to the first floor of the estate and injuring herself severely. The young duke ran to Arya and managed to give her first aid. After that, he carried the girl to bed so that she could rest a little and come to her senses after the attack. Carlosian de Nabes told his ex-wife that she needed to be patient for a while and take a medicine that would relieve the symptoms of the disease. But the main character did not listen to her ex-husband and told him to shut up immediately. After that, the girl suddenly stood up and hugged Carlosian de Nabes. Arya grabbed the young lord tightly and asked him again to kill her immediately. Carlosian Denabes was very surprised because he did not expect such a turn of events. The girl, overcome by a fit of strange illness, smiled and said that if the young duke could not love her, then he should kill his ex-wife so that she would not suffer anymore. Carlosian Denabes embraced his ex-wife and began to pity her. The young duke understands that the girl is currently in an inadequate state, so he should not pay attention to her words and actions. Now the young lord recognizes the real Arya, who passionately confesses her love to him and constantly repeats his name. It begins to seem to Carlosian Denabes that in the body of this girl who embraces him, there live two personalities that replace each other in turn. During the day, the kind Arya dominates, and at night, the personality of the proud and offended ex-wife of the duke prevails. Suddenly, the main character leaned towards her ex-husband and said that she died only because of him. He never loved Arya, so she decided to leave this world. Morning came. The young duchess sits in her bed and regrets what she said to her ex-husband last night. The girl is very ashamed now. The main character told Carlosian Denabes that she was not herself yesterday, so he should not be angry with her. The young lord did not answer and took off his shirt. After this, Carlosian Denabes showed his ex-wife the many scratches and abrasions on his body so that she would understand that she needed treatment. The girl must think about her behavior, because it could end badly. The main character looks at the scars on her ex-husband's body in surprise, but does not feel any regret about it. On the contrary, the girl feels that she is much better now. Suddenly, a servant named Rodi burst into Aryadelina's chambers without knocking. The girl said that the preparations for the meal were already completed. The maid saw the master and mistress hugging, and it made her very embarrassed. The girl did not expect to see something like that in this room, so she entered here without warning. The confused maid immediately apologized for her bad manners. The unfortunate girl was very afraid that she would be severely punished or fired. The main character said that nothing terrible had happened. After that, Aryadelina asked the girl if she worked as a junior servant. The duchess was embarrassed by the very young age of the maid. After this, the young aristocrats went to breakfast. Carlosian Denabes asked his ex-wife not to commit any more desperate and stupid acts that could endanger her life. The duke hints at the girl's jump from the stairs yesterday. She almost broke her neck falling down. The main character replied that she did not do it on purpose. The girl was in a state of affect, so she jumped off the stairs. The dizziness that suddenly appeared during the attack of the disease was to blame. Carlosian Denabes replied that he had been living with this disease for many years and had never done anything like that. Aryadelina needed to learn to control herself during attacks of the disease. The young lord added that this strange mental illness always intensifies a person's hidden fears and grievances. Therefore, it is necessary to prepare in advance for future attacks. The main character listened attentively to Carlosian Denabes and realized that yesterday's request for love was her subconscious desire. This surprised the girl very much. Several days passed. Aryadelina, accompanied by several maids, went out into the street to meet her ex-husband and the guest he had recently spoken of. The main character is waiting for the young duke and thinks about recent events that do not leave her mind. One of the maids said that Carlosian Denabes will arrive soon. These words inspire Aryadelina and give her joy. Suddenly, the duchess noticed a young aristocrat cheerfully chatting with one of the maids. The girl thought that this man was the guest her ex-husband had spoken of. The stranger asked the maid he was flirting with if she was tired of her work and would like to relax a little in the company of a noble aristocrat. These words greatly embarrassed the maid. Aryadelina watches the aristocrat who is pestering her maid. This does not please the young duchess, who has always defended her servants. In the opinion of the aristocrat, any person deserves to be treated with respect. Especially those who are easier to offend than others deserve it. Carlosian Denabes' ex-wife is getting angry. She won't allow some rude and ill-mannered nobleman to encroach on the honor of an innocent girl. Let her be from a lower class. It doesn't change anything. People should be able to answer for their actions. This applies especially to representatives of the aristocratic class. The situation was aggravated by the fact that the lustful stranger began to give free rein to his hands and grope the unfortunate maid, which was very much not to her liking. Finally, the main character remembered that this nobleman bears the surname Doffelman. He bears the title of Count and is famous throughout the empire for his excellent business skills. The main character continues to watch as Count Doffelman pesters her maid. The aristocrat turns to the maid and says that she is very beautiful. This embarrasses the girl. After that, the aristocrat grabbed the maid by the waist and pressed her to himself. The confused maid tries to break free from the embrace of the impudent nobleman, but she fails. The unfortunate girl is sure that she must endure these advances of the lustful count. She cannot disgrace the name of her master. The main character realized that it was time for her to intervene in this tense situation to save her maid from trouble. Arya loudly called Count Doffelman and headed towards him. The lustful nobleman immediately recognized the former mistress of the Denabes estate and greeted her. He was very happy to meet Arya. The main character looked intently into the eyes of Count Doffelman and thought that his manner of speech was very rude. This nobleman does not watch his words at all and says the first thing that comes to his mind. Arya company does not bother the cheeky aristocrat at all, who continues to embrace the embarrassed maid. Count Doffelman does not pay attention to such trifles. The young duchess did not stand on ceremony with the lustful aristocrat. The girl quickly grabbed her maid and removed her from Count Doffelman's embrace. This act greatly surprised the impudent nobleman. Count Doffelman looked at Arya angrily. At first, he wanted to attack the defenseless girl, but then he changed his mind and continued to incinerate her with his gaze. The young duchess is not going to retreat and give up her positions. Life has hardened the girl enough for her to be able to give a worthy rebuff to people of the sort like Count Doffelman. Arya turned to her maid and told her to leave immediately. The maid did not want to leave her mistress in the company of a lustful aristocrat who could harm her. The main character looked meaningfully at her subordinate and said that everything would be fine with her. The maid should do everything as usual and not ask about anything. The maid, whose name is Eloy, said that she will do everything as her mistress ordered. But she is very afraid for the young lady, who is left alone in the company of Count Doffelman. After that, the maid went to her colleagues, who were standing nearby and carefully observing the situation. The main character closed her eyes and tried to collect her thoughts. Arya thought for a moment and looked intently into the eyes of the lustful count, who towered before her like a tall rock. Count Doffelman is distinguished by his large build and tall stature. The main character stands in front of a huge aristocrat and does not understand what could happen to her now. But the brave girl is determined not to retreat and not to give up. She is determined to give a worthy rebuff to the impudent guest of the Denabes estate. Count Doffelman turned to his opponent and asked why she was on her ex-husband's estate if she should now be in captivity in a distant monastery. The cheeky aristocrat thought for a moment, grinned maliciously, and said that Arya had not changed at all since their last meeting. She was still as good and beautiful as ever. Count Doffelman looked at his interlocutor and added that she liked to ignore people. The same thing happened at the last party, when Arya did not pay due attention to the lustful nobleman. Now the main character understood everything. Count Doffelman once tried to flirt with Arya and was unequivocally rejected. Therefore, the impudent nobleman has a reason to hate the young duchess. The girl remembered how dissolutely the former Arya had behaved in her past life. She always surrounded herself with various admirers in order to arouse jealousy in her husband, who had always worshipped only the holy princess Dorothea. Count Doffelman did not like that Arya did not want to talk to him, so he grabbed the girl's hand tightly and said that he would not tolerate the young duchess ignoring his presence here. The main character did not lose her head in the current situation. The girl smiled, despite the pain in her hand, which was grabbed by the impudent aristocrat. She said that Count Doffelman was absolutely right now. The nobleman continues to hold his interlocutor's hand and squeezes it more and more. He does not understand what the main character is talking about and tries to force the weak girl to submit to his brute force. But Arya turned out to be a brave girl who can stand up for herself. The main character raised her leg and kicked the impudent aristocrat in the groin with all her might. This move immediately had a remarkable effect. Count Doffelman lost his balance and fell to the ground. The aristocrat was confused because he did not expect such a turn of events. He was used to achieving everything in this life by brute force, but this time he did not succeed. The main character looks contemptuously at the defeated nobleman and rubs her crushed wrists. Arya looked around. The girl thinks that Carlosian Denabes should have returned to the estate by now. She went out to meet her ex-husband, and she will do it, no matter what the obstacles. Meanwhile, Count Doffelman tried to grab the young duchess by her dress to make her stop. But this time, too, the impudent aristocrat was defeated. He failed to hold the main character. Arya felt that the aristocrat was trying to hold her back. So the girl jerked sharply and freed herself from the tenacious hands of the evil nobleman, who was very angry about this. It all ended with Count Doffelman having only a small piece of fabric left in his hand, which he had torn off the main character's dress. The girl hurried away from the dangerous enemy, who could soon come to his senses and harm her. But for Arya, this is not the main thing now. She is very excited because she is waiting for the return of Carlosian. The girl cannot understand why she is experiencing such a surge of emotions at the moment. The main character understands that now she needs to run away from the annoying aristocrat, who does not give up his attempts to keep her and take revenge on her for the insult. Arya wants to leave this place, but she hears that behind her back, Count Doffelman does not calm down and loudly threatens her. This situation begins to anger the main character. Suddenly, the young Duchess felt that the annoying aristocrat had risen to his feet and managed to grab her, trying to harm her. The main character understands that the current situation is becoming critical. Count Doffelman threw the girl to the ground and crushed her with his body weight. After that, he said that he could perfectly replace the young Duchess's ex-husband. The aristocrat claims that he can do it even better than Carlosian. At first, the main character did not understand what the impudent nobleman was talking about. But after a few moments, the girl felt that Count Doffelman wanted to take possession of her right there. The evil aristocrat has already started to take off the main character's dress to take revenge on her for his public humiliation that just happened. Arya is confused and does not know what to do now. The main character quickly realized that she needed to do something urgently. Arya kicked her offender hard in the stomach again, and he left the girl alone, groaning in terrible pain. Now the young Duchess did not hesitate. She jumped nimbly to her feet and quickly ran away from Count Doffelman, who had not yet recovered from the blow he had received. But the evil aristocrat is not going to calm down. Count Doffelman tried to stop the main character again, grabbing her hand. He said that Arya will not be able to escape from him. The main character was very angry with Count Doffelman, who did not want to leave the girl alone. Arya told the aristocrat to leave her alone immediately. Otherwise, he would pay dearly for it. The enraged aristocrat said that the young Duchess was an ordinary madwoman who thought too much of herself. Now Count Doffelman would prove it to the girl in practice. The main character stares at the evil aristocrat. The girl is not afraid of him, but she is very upset that this annoying nobleman ruined her dress, who had just returned home after an absence, intervened in the situation. The young duke turned to Count Doffelman and said that he did not like unnecessary noise in his house. Carlosian took off his coat and threw it over the shoulders of his ex-wife, whose dress was torn to shreds by Count Doffelman. A servant immediately ran up to Arya, who wanted to help her mistress. The main character is very happy that her ex-husband returned home and can protect her from the evil offender. The young duke looked at Count Doffelman and said that everything in his family estate belonged to him alone. This applied not only to things, but also to people. Count Doffelman kneels and looks at Carlosian with confusion. The evil nobleman said that Arya is a criminal, so she cannot be needed by such a worthy person as the young lord. Carlosian did not listen to the stupid aristocrat. The young duke walked up to Count Doffelman and covered his mouth with his hand, lifting him up a few centimeters above the ground. After this, the young lord deftly threw the annoying aristocrat to the ground and said that he must learn this lesson forever. Count Doffelman hit the hard stones that paved the courtyard of the estate very hard. Carlosian looked contemptuously at the fallen count and said that no one in this world has the right to touch what belongs to him. If someone does not understand this, then he will pay dearly for his stupidity. Count Doffelman kneels before the young duke. He feels confused and very humiliated. The evil nobleman groans in pain and grief. After a few seconds, the aristocrat came to his senses a little and said that he had made a big mistake today. It would never happen again. He would try to make sure that Carlosian would not be upset. The young duke listened attentively to his opponent and removed the glove from his left hand. After this, Carlosian threw his glove at Count Doffelman, challenging him and showing him complete contempt. The young lord thought for a moment and ordered the evil nobleman to leave his ancestral estate immediately. If Count Doffelman ever showed his face to Carlosian again, he would regret it very much. The duke turned and walked towards his ex-wife to see how she was feeling. The humiliated count sat on the ground, burning with shame. Arya had already calmed down a little thanks to the care of the maid who was now looking after her. The young lord approached the main character and looked at her carefully. The young duchess is very happy to see her ex-husband, who has just stood up for her. The girl turns to the duke and thanks him for his help. Carlosian de Nabes listened attentively to Ariadolina and said nothing. The young duke picked up his ex-wife in his arms to carry her into the house. The aristocrat looked closely at his charge and realized that she needed to be put in order immediately. First, Ariadolina needed to change her torn clothes. A quick-witted maid heard that Carlosian de Nabes wanted Ariadolina to change her attire. She hurried to inform her master that the young duchess only had the dress she was currently wearing. The duke was not embarrassed. He knew how to solve this problem quickly and efficiently. Carlosian de Nabes brought his ex-wife to the best clothing store in the capital of the empire. Here, the main character will be able to buy herself everything she wants. When the duke and his ex-wife entered the clothing boutique called Enarode, they were greeted by the owner of the store, Madame Rosanna Este. The enterprising girl was very happy to see the important and respected guests. Ariadolina borrowed her maid's dress to go shopping because she didn't have another dress. But that will soon be fixed by buying new dresses. The main character watches her ex-husband and the owner of the clothing store, who is too friendly with the young duke. Carlosian de Nabes decided to get down to business right away and said that he needed new clothes for Ariadolina. After this, the young duke looked intently at Madame Rosanna Este and added that he had little time and he was not going to waste it on unnecessary conversations. The owner of the boutique listened attentively to the important client and immediately began taking Ariadolina's measurements. Madame Rosanna Este cannot understand what is happening now and why the duke's ex-wife is now next to him. It is all very strange and surprising. The enterprising lady thought for a moment and came to the conclusion that the reputation of her clothing store could suffer greatly if everyone found out that she had sewn a dress for a criminal known throughout the empire. But the cunning woman, despite all these thoughts, continues to take measurements from the ex-wife of Carlosian de Nabes, fearing his inexorable wrath. In this situation, the owner of the clothing store is better off keeping quiet and performing her duties correctly. Otherwise, she may pay for her excessive curiosity. The main character really enjoys the fitting process. Ariadolina felt like a real woman again. She told Madame Rosanna Este that she would be looking forward to her new dress. The owner of the clothing boutique listened attentively to her customer and smiled at her. She could not believe that Ariadolina had changed so much. Carlosian de Nabes' ex-wife had always been mean and selfish. Kindness was not her nature. After a while, the dress fitting was over. Madame Rosanna Este went out into the hall of her shop and told Carlosian de Nabes that his ex-wife would now change and come out to him. The young lord reads the newspaper and pays no attention to the shopkeeper who stands next to him. An awkward silence falls in the room. The awkward pause was broken by the main character, who changed into a new dress and went out into the hall. The girl turned to her ex-husband and said that she was ready to go home. Madame Rosanna Este saw Ariadolina in a new outfit and froze in admiration. Carlosian de Nabes also managed to appreciate his ex-wife's new outfit. The young lord really liked the blue dress, which turned out to suit Ariadolina very well, thanks to the color of her turquoise eyes. But the young duke was not used to expressing his emotions in public. He thought for a moment and asked Ariadolina to try on other dresses so that she would have several. Madame Rosanna Este noticed the young lord's reserved reaction and decided to reprimand him. Carlosian de Nabes should express his admiration for the beautiful attire of Lady Ariadolina. After this, the owner of the clothing store turned to the main character and said that she would pick out new outfits for her that would make Carlosian de Nabes express his admiration properly. Ariadolina listened attentively to Madame Rosanna Este and thanked her for her help and full understanding of the situation. A few minutes later, the main character put on a new red dress. This outfit delighted the owner of the clothing boutique. But the young lord again reacted very reservedly. Then came the turn of a beautiful green dress, which Madame Rosanna Este liked very much. She said that it had a wonderful line of shoulders. The owner of the boutique was very happy that today she had such a beautiful client visiting her, who suited all the dresses she tried on. After a while, she told her assistants to bring her all the dresses that were in the store. Madame Rosanna Este placed a precious necklace of diamonds and pearls around Ariadolina's neck, which perfectly highlights the natural elegance of the main character. As the enterprising woman placed the precious necklace around her client's neck, she noticed the terrible scars that Ariadolina had received during her previous attempts to leave this world. Madame Rosanna Este immediately thought that Carlosian de Nabes' ex-wife had been abused while she was in captivity. Now the owner of the clothing store understands why Ariadalina's character has changed so much. The woman looks at her client and understands that she had to experience too much in this life to be transformed and shine with renewed beauty. All this time, Carlosian Denabes carefully watched his ex-wife and her new outfits. When the fitting of all the dresses was finished, the young duke made several recommendations on the models of the dresses that he saw and ordered all these dresses to be delivered to his family estate. Madame Rosanna Este listened attentively to Carlosian Denabes and was very surprised by his reasonableness. It turned out that this aristocrat had been carefully watching all the models that were presented today and did not show it, reading the newspaper. The young lord was about to leave the shop and said that he was going to continue shopping in this boutique. He asked Madame Rosanna Este to send an assistant to his estate once a month, who would present new models of dresses for consideration. The owner of the fashionable clothing boutique was very pleased with the bright prospects of her business and said that she would fulfill the young lord's request. When the young aristocrats left the clothing store, Madame Rosanna Este thought that she could not wait a single second. The enterprising woman must immediately tell all her acquaintances that Carlosian Denabes and Lady Ariadalina had reconciled again and were on excellent terms. This information would greatly improve the reputation of the fashion boutique that Madame owned. The former spouses returned home. Carlosian Denabes said that from that day on, Ariadalina would live in his room. The girl was very surprised by these words. The young lord added that he could not sleep because of his ex-wife's illness, so it was better to keep her close to give her first aid immediately. The main character looked at Carlosian Denabes carefully and thought that he looked a little tired. This made the girl feel guilty. Maybe the young duchess shouldn't have bought herself new clothes today and tired the young lord out with it. Ariadalina asked her ex-husband what he would do if rumors began to spread that they were sleeping in the same room. This could harm the young lord's reputation. Carlosian Denabes listened carefully to Ariadalina and thought about her words. But this topic does not bother the young lord too much. His thoughts are occupied with other things now. After that, the main character went to her new room to rest a little after a hard day and think about the current situation. Ariadalina lay down on her bed and thought about how Carlosian Denabes was still somewhat cold towards her. This aristocrat was secretive and withdrawn. He did not like to share his thoughts with others. The main character decided not to think about it anymore. Now Ariadalina wants to take care of her terrible scar, which still remains on her neck. The young duchess went to the mirror and looked at her terrible scar. It turned out that it was healing perfectly and had almost disappeared. This made the main character very happy, but she could not understand why this had happened. After that, Ariadalina went out to the balcony and tried to sing loudly to test the strength of her voice. The main character managed to produce several loud notes, but her voice still remained hoarse. This is a noticeable progress that pleased the girl. The main character sang a few notes loudly once more. She is very pleased with her voice. Only her throat hurts a little, but that will soon pass too. Ariadalina is standing on the balcony and feels very happy at the moment. The main character has returned to the estate of her beloved. She also regained the ability to sing. It's just wonderful. Meanwhile, Carlosian Denabes also went outside to smoke a cigar and think about the situation. Suddenly, the young lord heard his ex-wife singing and was very surprised that the strength of her voice had returned. Carlosian Denabes was also glad that Ariadalina was recovering. The young duke saw his ex-wife standing on the balcony of her room, singing loudly. It was a very entertaining sight, which brought new colors to the monotonous life of the Denabes estate. The aristocrat watches his ex-wife closely and thinks that he never suspected that she could sing well. Perhaps Ariadalina should develop her talent further. Carlosian Denabes realized that the young duchess was now singing a beautiful song about unhappy love. The young nobleman remembered how his ex-wife had told him that she loved to sing. It helped her in difficult moments of her life. The duke thought about how he still couldn't figure out his ex-wife's true intentions. He always felt like Ariadalina could deceive him at the most unexpected moment. Carlosian Denabes looked at his ex-wife again and began to doubt his conclusions. This girl seemed too sincere and happy at the moment to harbor any evil intentions. The young duke finished his cigar and returned to his office. He told his subordinates that the meeting was over for the day. Carlosian Denabes wished to attend to other matters now. The young lord's subordinates accepted their master's offer and began to discuss the song that Ariadalina had just sung. They had heard it too. The men consulted and decided that the duchess had dedicated this love song to her ex-husband. Meanwhile, the main character got tired of singing her love song. The girl's throat started hurting again, and she decided that she had enough practice in her favorite activity for today. Arya returned to her room and took a handkerchief to wipe away the blood that was coming from her throat. The girl realized that she should hold off on singing for now. It was very dangerous for her health. When the main character got herself in order, she saw that Carlosian entered her room. This surprised the girl very much. The young duke looks at his ex-wife carefully. He came to Arya to discuss an important matter that interests him. The main character turned to her ex-husband and asked him why he came to her at such an hour. Carlosian replied that he had simply finished work early and wanted to talk to the Duchess. After this, the young duke asked his ex-wife why she had decided to sing a sad song about unhappy love that day. This question surprised Arya very much. She thought that Carlosian would never dare to open up to her and express his opinion about the song he had heard. The main character smiled at her ex-husband and said that she was very glad that he heard the song she sang today. The girl also asked if Carlosian liked this composition. The young duke listened attentively to his interlocutor and at first did not understand what she had just asked him. Arya question greatly puzzled the proud aristocrat, who did not like to share his thoughts and emotions. The main character asked again what Carlosian thought of the song she had just performed on the balcony of her room. Perhaps the young lord did not like the composition. Finally, Carlosian replied that he liked the song very much. It was unusual and very sad. These words made the main character very happy. This was exactly the reaction she expected from her ex-husband. The young duke looked closely at the main character and asked her if she wanted to continue singing and develop her talent, or if the girl was just planning to entertain herself with various songs sometimes, to cheer herself up in sad moments of life. Arya does not understand why her ex-husband asks about this. The girl answered that she wants to put some effort into developing her talent and improving her vocal skills. Carlosian thought for a moment and said that Arya should not sing in front of other people. It could have a bad effect on the reputation of the girl and the owner of the Dinabe's estate. Perhaps the Duchess should find another place for this activity. These words greatly upset and puzzled the main character, who expected a different reaction from her ex-husband. But he was always distinguished by excessive coldness in his reasoning. Therefore, the main character does not take this remark too close to heart. Arya does not want to talk about this topic anymore. The girl's good mood has disappeared because Carlosian is again dissatisfied with her actions. The main character smiled meaningfully at her ex-husband to ease the tense situation a little. After that, the girl asked the young duke about the song she sang today. Carlosian is a little embarrassed to talk about it. He cleared his throat and said that it was a very beautiful song that he liked. After these words, the heroine's mood improved again. The young duchess laughed and thanked her ex-husband for such a flattering review of her singing today. She tried very hard not to spoil the song with her weak and hoarse voice. Carlosian was very embarrassed when he heard the words of his interlocutor. He was not used to such frank conversations with people. The young lord began to doubt that he had raised this topic. With these thoughts, the duke hurried out of the room. He decided to pretend that he had other things to do that could not be delayed. The main character watched her ex-husband go. Arya is very pleased with the conversation she just had with her ex-husband. Finally, Carlosian began to open his psychological defenses a little and share his feelings with his ex-wife. After that, the main character decided to do other things. The girl went to the shelf, on which there are various books. Arya wants to read something about dark magic. A few minutes later, the young duchess chose a suitable book to supplement her knowledge of magic spells. The girl believes that this may be very useful to her soon. Meanwhile, Carlosian left Arya room and stood there, completely hesitant. The young duke felt a little uneasy after his conversation with his ex-wife. The aristocrat thought that he was starting to go a little crazy if he was paying attention to songs about unhappy love. Maybe it was something else, and he was starting to develop romantic feelings for Arya Carlosian remembered his ex-wife singing on the balcony today. He can't bear the thought that her love song could have been meant for someone else. It makes the young lord feel a sharp sense of jealousy. The aristocrat leaned over to relax a little and come to his senses. After that, the duke came up with the idea that only he had the right to hear the songs of his ex-wife. No one else was allowed to do this. A few minutes later, Carlosian returned to his room to change and go to bed. But a surprise awaited him. When the young duke put on his dressing gown, he found the young duchess lying in his bed, quietly reading a book on black magic. Carlosian Denabes was very surprised by this circumstance and asked his ex-wife what she was doing in his bed. The young lord had completely forgotten that he had ordered the girl to live in his room from that day on, so that he could give her first aid during the attacks of her illness. The main character was happy when she saw her ex-husband. The girl is very happy that now she will not have to spend her nights completely alone. But the young duke does not share the young duchess's enthusiasm. He says that Arya will not sleep in his bed. She will be in Carlosian Denabes' room, but not in his bed. The aristocrat doesn't want to argue with his ex-wife anymore. He changed into more comfortable clothes to relax and unwind after a hard day. The main character pretends to read a book and does not want to disturb her ex-husband. A few minutes later, Arya asked Carlosian Denabes if he was angry with her for spending the night in his room. The young lord replied that he was not angry with the duchess at all. The aristocrat calmed down a bit and began to adapt to the new circumstances. After that, Carlosian Denabes noticed that his ex-wife was reading a book. The main character said that this book was about the history of the empire. The young nobleman leaned over Lady Arya and said that he would be ready tonight when she had another attack of mental illness. The girl was a little confused when she heard these words. After this, Carlosian Denabes sat his ex-wife on his lap and said that she too must be prepared for the events that await her tonight. She must always be on guard. Otherwise, the voices in her head will take over the consciousness of the main character.